All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. So sorry I'm a few minutes late here, but hopefully everyone's having a good evening here. It's been a very busy one here this weekend. Hope you've had a good weekend yourself. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member. If you'd also like to get that priority answering, there's always a link in the description, as well as other join buttons here on the page. And so yeah, but I see lots of you have already joined in here, of course, and so just thanks to I see Brian, Jazz, Austin, Anthony, Kevin, Vishal, Kyle, Cam Jam, Cars, B Mitchell, Grand, Brian, yeah, Good Stick, Wheatman, Danny, Luke, so many of you. Thanks so much, everyone. And so we'll get right into it here. Everyone's saying hope everyone had a good weekend. Vishal says, "How's it going, Matt? My spot of the day was a teal colored Geo Metro 5-door hatch. Was so fascinated by it. That's awesome. Very good spot there. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was a couple cool things I saw this week, but it's now evading me for some reason. So I'll think of it hopefully in a few minutes. But yeah, that's quite the spot there. And Kyle says, "Hey everyone, I missed last week's. Anything good talked about? It's always good. You know, if you're very curious, you can go back and watch the full 2-hour stream or skim through it or whatever. But always good topics here. But happy to have you back here, Kyle. And I see Cam says aloha, and let me see. B. Mitchell says, "Evening all. While warmer than average today, it was also the day to put some of the summer cars into hibernation. So I'd be cheating for any interesting car spotting since they're in my garage." Nice. It's very fortunate that you have such an awesome collection. You can have your own fun spots anytime you want. That's great. And let me see. Good Stick says, "Any bad drivers this week?" That's always another fun question. I'm gonna move this over a little bit. Trying to think of any really bad stuff. I don't think there was anything super bad. Just just all the usual stuff, but nothing especially egregious, I don't think. But yeah, if any of you have any bad driver stories from this week, feel free to share. It's always fun reading those out and seeing what everyone else encounters during their daily commutes or whatever. And Danny says, "Hey, Matt, my spot of the week was a 2012 Chevy Colorado 3LT, meaning it was the Colorado with a 5.3 V8. I guess I forgot that they had the V8. That's impressive. I thought, maybe it was just that like there was discussion about it going into this new gen version and it not happening. But then there was, I think, it's a company in Australia that put V8s in the ZR2s or whatever. But that's pretty sweet. I don't know why I don't recall there being a V8 in the Colorados here in the States. That's pretty sweet." Luke says, "Hey, do you notice that cars with 3 level heated seats versus 2 level heated seats, the seats get way hotter with level 3? Heated seats are kind of all over the place, I think, with most companies, honestly. Everyone does it a little differently, and I can't say that I've noticed. Honestly, I feel like whenever it's a 2-stage, it's a little simpler, and usually that means it is more than happy to just roast you at, max is max, regardless of which level you're on there. And I feel like the ones when there's level 3 of 3 levels of heating, that's a little bit more advanced, and I think oftentimes actually they get less hot because I think it's a little more fine-tuned with how it's dispersing that heat versus just being like, turn on the electricity and not much else. But yeah, I can't say that I've noticed a giant difference. I certainly have noticed differences in the way some heat up, like some heat up faster than others. And this is something even like we actually noticed this recently in the Buick Enclave, which you'll see that review probably in early 2025 at the rate I'm going now. But that one had some really slow heated seats where it took a while to heat up. Even the heated steering wheel took a while. And heated steering wheel, usually you want that to come on pretty full blast pretty immediately. That's one that like everything took a while to like actually warm up. And that's strange because usually most heated seats come on pretty strong pretty quickly. And both seats and wheel are all slow. So it was so slow actually. I think Beth actually commented like, "Man, like these seats are taking a while to warm up." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's kind of surprising." But yeah, that's really my only recent observation about heated seat differences. But yeah, if any of you have noticed any differences, let me know. But yeah, I haven't noticed that Luke. That's interesting. But B Mitchell says also, is Volkswagen canning the manual transmission in or before 2025? My brother has a 17 GTI and is thinking about getting a replacement GTI or R32 with a stick before he can't anymore. 2024 is the last year in the States for GTI, and actually just in general for GTI and Golf R with the stick. So, and there's probably not a whole lot out there now because I think 25s are starting to show up. So you're going to want to, and even for the 24 GTIs, I believe it's only in the 380 edition, which is like kind of the final send off for the manuals. So he's going to want to get on that pretty fast if he wants to buy a brand new, one. I don't even know. I haven't searched to see, but there may not actually be very many out there left. I don't know, but that's the way to go. And yeah, do not delay on that because because it's the Mark 8.5 generation comes in here in 2025. That no longer offers a manual for both Golf R and GTI. So that's the end of that. Maybe someday they'll bring it back or reverse the decision, but for now, no more manuals at all. And I was hoping to get a final GTI manual here this fall, one of the 380 editions, to kind of do a send off to the manual GTI, but they never had one in the fleet, at least not around me. So that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a fun manual. I tested one I think about a year or two ago. Great little car with a stick. And yeah, I see Vishal's also didn't realize they put the V8 in the Colorados there. And Jordan, thank you so much for the first super chat of the night. He says Nissan Leaf still a thing, no advancements. The intel on Leaf is that it will become a larger EV, share a platform, I believe, with Aria and some of the other coming Nissan electric stuff. But that is, I think, coming in 2026. I think it's a little ways off still. It's going to be a little while. So, but yes, they're doing a new Leaf. It's going to be a little bit more of a crossover, not a hatchback, really. Hopefully, they'll still keep a low price point. We'll see. But yeah, it is going to kind of change a little bit there. Yeah, thank you for the super chat, and I'm excited to see what they do with the new Leaf, though. It's definitely coming, and I'm happy that they will hopefully keep it affordable. That's the only thing it needs to be is affordable. Everything else is negotiable, but has to be affordable, I think. And let me see here. Yeah, Danny says plenty of them here in New Jersey. Like my last driving lesson, which was highway, got honked at by someone for doing 50 and 50, and there was an empty lane right next to them. Yeah, that's silly. If there's an empty lane, especially, no reason to be honking at someone for doing the speed limit. But I mean, we live in an era where everyone's got a short fuse, especially in an election year. Everyone's, I think, a little more stressed than usual. So yes, there's less patience out there on the roadways. And Brian says plenty of bad drivers in Nebraska and Iowa, especially against motorcycle riders. That's why I stick with cars. Man, you think that they wouldn't mess with motorcycle riders because motorcycles could totally usually are not the type of people to pick fights with, stereotypically speaking. I know my one of my good friends, there's stories from his dad, like back in like the 70s or the 80s or whatever, like, drive around with like a chain, like a thick chain. Like, I think one time he said someone like, cut him off and he just like smashed their windshield. I think another time someone like bumped into him and he like kicked their fender in, like, back when you can get away with that stuff. And, and, there was no dash cams back then. And, again, people just, I guess, were expecting those things, or just, it was a more violent time in general in some ways. But yeah, so I feel like, you don't want to pick a fight with a motorcycle rider typically. At least I certainly don't try to. But Danny says my second spot of the week was a clean 2002 Mazda Protege 5, and it was a stick. Nice. That is a very rare spot. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. I remember when they were common, but not the case anymore. Goodstick says my Tesla got a new update. Now I can summon the car to come to me in a parking lot. Also, I can move the car backwards and forwards like Hyundai. Nice. That feature especially can be handy. If someone parks you in too closely, I haven't used it myself, but it's, one of those things that I see online has come in handy for a lot of people in the past, especially when someone's trying to be a jerk. And the summon thing, I'm interested to see, again, any of these autonomous things. Like, does Tesla tell you? I'm guessing they just throw all the blame on you if anything happens, right? Because like if you summon it and it does something stupid and bumps into something or someone, I'm guessing they'll be like, you had to stop it. I'm guessing you have a control. You can like emergency stop, right, if you need to, and you're supposed to keep an eye on it, right? Um, I mean, maybe I'd be curious if there's like a disclaimer that you agreed to good stick whenever you got that update, as far as the summoning thing. Because again, the legal thing is the most unknown component of this whole autonomous thing is, who's going to take the blame for these things. So I'm curious what the fine print said for that. If you don't mind sharing, I'd love to hear that. And Kyle says, I saw a black third gen Viper today. Geez, it's an aggressive looking car and sounds amazing. Nice. Yeah. All Vipers are pretty sick. And I mean, the V10 too, just to have a V10 and something like that. Good times. And Cam says, any bad drivers? Hi, I live in Maryland. Yeah, especially the DC Beltway. I mean, that is always like the one road in the world that is guaranteed to raise my blood pressure. Going around the Beltway in DC, like, never fails. Like, I'm always on edge, and I never enjoy driving through there ever. Like, not once has it been an enjoyable drive through the Beltway, trying to connect and go through all that. It's no fun. But I guess technically that maybe is actually DC, not Maryland. Strictly speaking, but yeah, a little stressy in that part of Maryland. Other parts of Maryland are beautiful though, and I do appreciate that Maryland's got some decent speed limits sometimes, and they're a little less militant about speed limits than Virginia, which is like, insane. So yeah, good pros and cons there for Maryland, in my opinion. But sorry you have to deal with bad drivers, Cam. TFI says Hyundai and Kia has the hottest heated seats. The Accent in Rio had my back sizzling like bacon. Nice. That's funny. Yeah, Hyundai and Kia do a really good job with their seats, not only with the heating, but also the cooling. They're some of the coldest cooled seats as well. And that's something that other companies, even high-end luxury companies, like, they can't figure out, like, how do we get this cold? Like, every Mercedes I'm in, the weakest ventilated seats of any luxury brand. Like, honestly, like, if it didn't have the blue lights illuminated telling me it was venting the seat, I probably wouldn't even notice any difference. Like, if you blindfolded me and tried to like play games about like, is the cooled seat actually on or isn't it? I probably wouldn't be able to tell you most of the time in a Mercedes. Completely useless cooled seat, in my opinion. Versus, again, Hyundai and Kia nail it. It's, really funny how some of those things play out. And Cam, thank you so much for super chat there. I don't see a question, but if you have a question attached, I'll definitely keep an eye out for that. But if it's just here's $5, I appreciate that. And thank you so much. But I will definitely keep an eye on that if you do have a follow-up question to that. But I appreciate the support. And says beer money. Yeah, that's always appreciated as well. So thank you so much. And let me see. Luke says, my 2020 TLX has 3 level, gets way hotter than my buddy's 2021 ILX with 2 level. Interesting. I think that could maybe even also be a generational thing. ILX is a simpler, older kind of vehicle versus, the newer TLX is a little bit, I mean, even though, again, we're talking yours is 2020 and theirs is 21, ILX, obviously older gen, dates back to the prior gen Civic and all that versus, the TLX being a fresh platform there. And what was it? I think 2020, right? It was the first year, or 2021. Maybe, I can't remember. I think you said you have the pre new gen, so it's the last gen, right? Is that the last year? I'm always foggy on when they did that switch over. It's either 2020 or 2021. But regardless, the higher up vehicle, and I think the newer vehicle, all those things probably help a little bit. But I don't think there's really much of a rhyme or reason. Sometimes it's interesting. Wheatman says, any news on the new Prelude and the Acura version? Not since the weekly update. Haven't heard any follow-up stuff since then. So yeah, just the stuff I said in the weekly update is the newest intel that I have, and I hope just hope that it actually comes and it turns out to be something a little bit more exciting than we might be expecting here. But Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, worst press / loaner vehicle malfunction experience. That's a very good question. I mean, I'm fortunate that I've never had any of them leave me stranded, and that's happened to other people. It's very, very rare, but so I've never had any like really bad thing. Anything that's usually happened has been a minor thing. Like I've had a couple of slow leaks in tires. Actually, the Corvette E-Ray this summer, somehow I picked up a nail. Thankfully, it was a very slow leak. and I drove home and didn't even realize I'd ran over a nail until I came out the next morning and the tire was down to 5 psi. And it even actually held air because I filled it back up and drove around a little bit more just to do my final little thoughts on it that I needed to do. And then yeah, I think actually, and then I filled it up again, and the like fleet manager driver, they drove it to a local dealer and like made it fine to the dealer, and they were like looking around, and they finally like, oh yeah, there's something, and then they ordered a new tire. But I mean, yeah, but as far as malfunctions, honestly, I think the RAM this past, what was that, June or July? I did the RAM. That was probably the worst, honestly, because I've never had more things go wrong all in the same vehicle in the same week. I mean, that had, not only did the adaptive cruise control, it's supposed to be level 2 and the hands free. Not only did that not work, but whenever it glitched out, then it shut down all cruise control whatsoever. So I had no cruise control, and I drove that thing to the middle of the state and back, which is about a 6-7 hour round trip with no cruise control. Very first world problem, but kind of sucked that that failed right then and there, and that the speakers were rattling the whole time. And then, whenever I was driving around town, it was clunking with the drive train not being, super smooth and stuff. And again, that was a pre-production truck, and I've since talked to Ram about it, and they feel bad that it was such a basket case, and that that's not representative, I think, of the final products. Even though I've heard there's some others that have issues still. It's just been a widely reported thing that a lot of these Rams coming off the line need repairs as they're coming off the line, which I don't know how that happens. Like, you would think it would like fail inspection, and then they would be like, okay, like who's not screwing in this bolt correctly or whatever, and like fix these things. But it seems like it's this ongoing thing. I don't know why they can't figure out why these things keep needing fixes, or they're just not making that info public. But so yeah, I'd say actually the Ram is the worst. I mean, and sadly, the other recent malfunctions have all been Stellantis vehicles. The Hornet had, I was driving through rain and all the dash lights lit up just because I think the automatic emergency braking sensor got wet and that caused it to glitch. And had to cycle the car a couple of times to get those lights to go away. Tonale did a similar thing. And yeah, it's unfortunately just those Stellantis, some of them. I mean, like Pacifica was rock solid the whole week, so it's not all Stellantis stuff, but just those have been the ones in recent memory, and I don't recall anything more catastrophic than that's ever happened. Funny enough, I think the other thing, it's very, very rare, but I've had a couple vehicles throw check engine lights. And so the two in the past couple of years of thrown check engine lights are the Jeep Wrangler 4xe, another Stellantis product, unfortunately, threw a check engine light. And I think they said they just had to do a reflash and everything was fine. But those have since been recalled for battery issues and stuff as well. So there was that one. The other non-Stellantis thing was I had a Volvo XC60 Polestar Engineer, the T8 thing. That is another one that'll most likely get posted towards the end of this year. That I had at this point, I think almost 2 months ago. But anyway, that also threw a check engine light, and that was also, I think, surprising when I was driving through rain. It just threw a check engine light. I'm like, what the heck? This thing's like brand new, perfect, nothing weird going on, and it drove totally fine. The check engine light went away after like 3 key cycles. But again, just like you would think that brand new cars should not be throwing check engine lights. And so yeah, it's kind of interesting, but those are the biggest things. And again, these are minor things. I keep on driving, keep on going about my day, and it's all good. But those are the biggest things that I've encountered. But great question, Jordan. Thanks for asking. And Bruce, thank you for a super chat as well. He says, what's your top 5 cars of 2024 and one flop from each? Man, that's another good question. Top 5. I think probably the top one for me, kind of spoiling slightly my end of the year top 10 that I usually do, but I think Ioniq 5N so far is my favorite vehicle of the year. So that's the number one. As far as a flaw from that one, I don't know. I mean, I can't think of a flaw that it had. Yeah, it's pretty much perfect. Honestly, not to like have a cop out for that, but I can't think of honestly a flaw. I think maybe just the fact that you can't get more options on it. It's the weakest flaw, but that's the only like I wish you could get a pano moonroof in that, like you can in any other NX 5. And I wish you could kind of make it a little more luxurious and comfy. Especially considering the price tag. Again, I'm really reaching because I'm completely happy with it the way it is, but that's probably the thing for that. I'll try and go quicker for the other ones here, so this doesn't take me 20 minutes to get through. But um, second favorite car of the year. See, now I have to like pull up like everything I've driven and which things are my favorites. I mean, I guess another one, and this is one I haven't actually done a review on. But if you follow me on Instagram, I posted a quick little reel. I haven't done a YouTube video because it's a whole thing. But I drove a Ferrari 296 GTB around Fiorano in Italy. Did about, I think, 16 laps or so in it. So much fun. So that is right up there as one of the top vehicles. The one flaw of that, I don't know, it seemed pretty much flawless from my limited experience in it, but that's, I think the flaw of that, I don't think it's a flaw. It's fantastic with a 6-cylinder, but I think from a marketing standpoint, having the 6-cylinder is, I guess, a potential flaw for some people. But again, even that I think was pretty flawless car in my opinion. Thing ripped so hard. Yeah, I don't know. I'd honestly need to look at the list of everything that I've reviewed this year to like do a better job of like what are the top 5 things. I think the Rolls Royce Spectre was another top one just because it was one of the most expensive car I've ever reviewed, but also the quietest and the smoothest riding car I've ever tested. And that, I mean, again, I've reviewed over 700 cars. So I feel like that is quite an achievement. I mean, it's a Rolls Royce, is to be expected, but I've reviewed other Rolls Royces and this outdid even those. And really, it just was wild how quiet it is and how smooth it was, especially on the giant wheels that thing was rolling around on. McLaren Artura Spider, certainly, again, just because it's an exotic, but it's such a special, raw, really fun experience. Downside of that one also, for some people might be the electrification, but I think that was great. I think, there's really honestly no downside I can think of with Artura either, aside from the fact that maybe it doesn't sound as good. Yeah, I think some of the competitors do sound better, and that's the one shortcoming of the Artura. So that's another one. So, but yeah, I'm struggling to think of any others off the top of my head. Lots and lots of fun stuff this year. So many fun cars. So yeah, and actually, there's some other stuff coming that I'll be reviewing and posting up and stuff that may also make that list. Again, if you follow along closely, you might be able to read between the lines there, but things that I'm under embargo about and stuff that I can't talk about just yet, but some other stuff that's very, very good. And we'll see if I get a chance to drive the Charger EV before the end of the year, because that was another one. I'm probably one of 2 people on the planet that's actually excited about that thing. But that and Ioniq 5N were like the top ones I was excited for to try this year, because they're new, daring, creative things that aren't just the same old of a bunch of power, a bunch of this and that. It's doing things in a new way, which as a reviewer is more interesting to me than just evolutionary, same old kind of changes. To really have a giant shift is really fascinating to me. So that's something I'd also hopefully like to get in before the end of this year. We will see. I don't know exactly when that drive is happening still, but I'm hoping to maybe sneak that one in here before the end of the year. We'll see. But yeah, so that's best attempt at doing that off the top of my head there, but hopefully that was that's good, Bruce. And thank you so much for the super chat. And Brian, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, what do you think of a Safari Chevy E-Ray? The Dakar 911 and the Huracan have gotten a lot of attention and money. I think they should. I hadn't considered Corvette doing it. I've thought about other companies like Mustang and stuff, but it'd be cool for Corvette, especially with E-Ray again. Yeah, having that all-wheel drive give you that flexibility. I think the problem with Corvette is just the overhangs are so long, and that's a vehicle that I even at one point there was a little bit of an undulation in the road at one point where when I had the regular C8 for a week, where I actually feel like I just barely nipped something, if it was a front lip or the rear or something, whenever I was going over a bump at one point. They're really low. I mean, so they would really need to jack that thing up. And I think it would need a little bit more help getting to a Safari acceptable level than some of the other sporty things like a Mustang, where I think you don't have to do quite as much to get it there. But I think Safariing most of the things would be pretty cool, and a fun thing that if people want it, it's a fun experiment, try it out in limited numbers. And if people love it, try and expand it out or something. But I think it'd be worth doing as a limited run, if nothing else. So it's a fun idea. And thanks so much, Brian, for the super chat. And Kyle, thank you so much for giving 5 memberships. I really appreciate the generosity and the support. Happy to see some more people able to join the club there, and happy to have more people here we can chat with in the member questions. So thanks so much, Kyle, for that. Jordan, thank you for another super chat as well. He says, Ford, Aston Martin, Opel, Stellantis, joint styling of the Ford Fusion. Yeah, a lot of that. I will say I'm pretty certain that Aston Martin did it first, and everyone copied them. But yeah, Ford Fusion, they definitely pulled some Aston Martin styling there. I'm not super familiar with Opel designs as far as who's stealing off of who there, but there's a lot of copy pasting. And honestly, I have to give Stellantis credit. They were the first with Jeep. I guess it was before Stellantis, FCA. The Jeep Cherokee, when that first came out, and what was that, like 2014, was the first to do the split headlight thing. And I remember thinking that thing was so ugly when it first came out. And now literally every single car coming out has DRL on the top, real headlight, lower in the bumper there. Almost every single car coming out these days. And I mean, it makes sense to keep those headlights low so you're not blinding people with super high headlights. I appreciate what I think is some of the driving force behind that change. But man, the Cherokee called it. That makes me think that someone in FCA has a real crystal ball. Like, this is going to be huge and we're going to do it first. Because, then everyone slowly started to copy, the Cherokee. And, I don't know if everyone wanted to copy the Cherokee, but everyone did that same thing for whatever reason, thought this was a good idea. And just whoever styled the Cherokee at Jeep, they must have such an enormous amount of gratification and validation, getting all kinds of crap 10 years ago, and now being like, look at everything on the road copying my idea. So it's kind of wild. Again, there's a time traveler among the Stellantis workers or something. I don't know how they nailed that one 10 years before everybody else, but it's impressive. Ford enthusiasts, thanks so much for being a member for a month now. They say, I'm thinking about ordering a Maki Premium. Extended battery needed, or is standard good enough? Driving local only and have charging at work. Thanks. So yeah, I mean, if you have a shorter commute, you're driving locally only, it's not going to be a road tripper. And even if it is, you can work around that. But yeah, I'd say go for the standard battery. I think now it's, they keep bumping it up. I think it's like 220 some odd miles. I think ours is rated at 224, if I remember correctly. And I'm assuming you're talking about all-wheel drive, I believe. Can you still get rear-wheel drive with the California Route 1 version or whatever? But yeah, I think standard battery is totally fine. Even like worst case scenario in the dead of winter, when you're blasting the heat and not caring about efficiency whatsoever, or making any attempts to hypermile, because we don't. We blast the heat, we have everything cranked up and running, and we drive however we want and all that. Even in those worst things, the range will only go down as far as what it's estimating to, I think at 90% charge, which is what we top it to, unless we're going on a road trip. At 90%, I think the worst it got to was 135 miles of range, which, if we do 30 miles a day, it's wild. Typically, we don't even do that much. So it's not an issue. And so, yeah, even in a worst case scenario, I think you'll be completely fine. If you're only doing local driving and you have charging at work and you can top it off sufficiently, and if you potentially have charging at home, but even if you just have it at work, as long as you can get that top off, at least, once every day or two, I think you'll be totally fine with the standard range. And it's going to handle better because you have, it's lighter, just kind of better, I think, in all the ways if you don't need that extra range. So, Yeah, hope that helps you out. And feel free if you have any follow up questions. I'm more than happy to help. I'll be doing an update on our Maki here. We've had it now over 2 years. We passed the 2 year anniversary here back in August, and I'm waiting to try and figure out. So I took it in for inspection. It passed inspection. Sorry for the little side tangent here, but passed inspection fine. But then I got the report back, and I hadn't been keeping an eye on the tires as far as the tread depths. I have a gauge and stuff, and I checked that occasionally, but it had been a while. And sure enough, like the tires are down to like it's 5 30 seconds in the front and 4 30 seconds in the rear. And typically on tires, that is kind of the limit. Like at least in PA here to pass inspection, you have to have 2 30 seconds. But 4 30 seconds is right at the threshold when you start to really lose grip in your tires and it gets a little sketchy. And we're going into the cold months here. So bottom line, the Maki is going to need new tires before the end of the year. I'm going to try and work out a partnership. Like last year, I was able to work something out with Continental for the Bullet. I'm going to try. There's a couple tires I would like to test, but I have to say, I mean, we only have the Maki's got 13,000 miles on it, 13,000 miles, and those tires are shot. Other people say, and these are the Michelin Primacy all seasons. Other people have these tires. I've checked on the Maki forums, and some people can get like 30, 40,000 miles out of them. I have no clue. We do not drive hard. Most of the time, Beth's just driving our daughter around, running errands and stuff. We're not doing any kind of hard driving in it, really. I don't know why they only lasted 13,000 miles, but I know we're also not the only ones that have had this kind of an experience with these tires on the Mach-E, and also some other EVs. I mean, EVs are hard on tires, especially if it's not a tire that's formulated specifically for EVs. And so, yeah, 13,000 miles on a set of tires is the worst I've ever done. I mean, even the Bullet, whenever I replaced the tires, that was at 20,000 miles before those needed to be replaced. That's, way more power, exclusively rear-wheel drive, and that still lasted longer. So, and those are also Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's on those. These aren't even like aggressive, grippy tires. So, really disappointed in the tread life on these tires. Now, there is a tire warranty. So, if a tire company doesn't want to sponsor me, I can also just go to Ford and be like, hey, these tires only lasted. I believe that they have to refund me like 60% or give me like a 60% discount on a new set for that kind of mileage that I'm, for being so poor for those tires. So we'll see how that plays out. So I'm waiting to see what my tire situation is. Once that's set and I have new tires on the Mach-E, then I'll do an update and I'll, make that a bigger stink in a full-blown video being like, I only got 13,000 miles out of my tires. But that is one of the other things with EVs. They go through tires faster because they're heavier vehicles. So just keep that in mind if you are, shopping for EVs. But again, others have them last longer. I think, admittedly, I don't think I kept the PSI on the tires perfectly topped off. Sometimes I think it's supposed to do 39. They also didn't hold air very well. So sometimes it would drop down, a couple PSI before I topped it back up again. But that still should not kill the tires that fast. So I'm not sure what the deal was with them, but that's the one thing. Make sure you got a budget for tires. I mean, I'm saving money on no oil changes. I'm saving money on, gas and all these other things. So I'm still out. I'm still ahead, I guess I should say, and I'm out less money than I would be in a gas vehicle, but just keep that in mind. Anyway, moving on. Linda, thank you so much for giving 5 memberships there. Really appreciate that. Happy to see everyone able to grab those. But thanks so much for your generosity. And I'm going to see, getting back to the member questions here. Where was I? Way back here. Still scrolling here. So let me see. Vishal says, I've also seen a couple of 2025 X3s on the road. Still don't like how it looks. I haven't seen one yet. I've seen, pictures and stuff of people starting to get them, but have not actually seen one on the road. I'll have to see if it looks better in person, but that's cool. You're seeing them. B Mitchell says, bad driver this week, had a Cybertruck drive past the barricades and through several blocks of streets closed for road construction by my house. Holy crap. I'm assuming they were either really out of it to manage that or they had the full self-driving going, because either one would not surprise me, but that is wild. Hopefully no one got injured there. But yeah, now that Tesla's full self-driving actually is attempting to do full self-driving, even if it's not doing it very well, be on the lookout for rogue Teslas, that's for sure. Car says, Matt, what would be your top vehicle choices for driving in winter weather? Just curious for your opinion and experiences. I don't know. I mean, I think for me, like a really good all-wheel drive system actually to me is something I enjoy more than like a four-wheel drive system. I know, a lot of people love trucks, and if you need the ground clearance, especially, obviously trucks are great, but I don't like messing with a four-wheel drive system and worrying about, am I chewing up the diffs by leaving the four-wheel drive system on too long, and that whole thing. I'm clearly not a truck person, as you can tell, but so I don't love, honestly, driving a truck in the snow. Like I had the Silverado ZR2, and that was actually on mud terrain tires, which I was surprised, like did not grip on the snow. I mean, I know they're not designed to be snow tires, but you would think with those big deep blocks that like they'd be pretty good in the snow, but I was sliding all over the place in a Silverado ZR2 in the snow. Was not expecting that experience. That was not this past winter, but the winter before. So yeah, I actually like, to me, like having a great all-wheel drive system is really awesome. So, if I'm in like an Audi or I'm in any of those, more advanced European all-wheel drive systems are nice. But I mean, even regular all-wheel drive systems, as long as the tires are good, that's really the bottom line. I mean, it all comes down to tires. So to me, a good all-wheel drive vehicle with a decent amount of ground clearance and snow tires on it specifically, that's the way to go. I think, as far as like fun, I don't know, like if you were picking like a weather chasing kind of vehicle or some kind of like rugged thing that's ready for anything, I feel like the new Lexus GX would be one of my favorites. And have like some milder all-terrain, or again like dedicated snow tires on something like that. That does have like a high and low, for low and all that, but you can leave it in the auto mode. It handles it all for you. And, you're not having to be forced to make the decision of like, do I need to drive in rear wheel drive or whatever? Like it's always, going with all four wheels intelligently regardless. So GX is probably one of my favorites. Because again, you got that Lexus reliability. Typically speaking, you have that ruggedness. They really over-engineer those things. Land Cruiser is another one that I think would be a fun kind of winter warrior kind of deal. But me, liking lower, smaller cars and stuff like that, like I think like it's terrible ground clearance, but if ground clearance isn't that big of a deal, I'd say, like Audi RS6 Avant, would be super fun to drive through the snow. GR Corolla would be an amazing winter beater. That you just rip up in the snow and just have a blast with. The ultimate, to me, ultimate winter driving kind of fun vehicles, again, because I'm a Ferrari fan, Ferrari Purosangue, or even Ferrari GTC4 Lusso, screaming V12 prancing through the snow. Especially if it's in red during the holidays, be very, very on point there. That would be the dream for me. If I ever won some insane amount of money someday, you'll see me daily driving through the wintertime in a GTC4 Lusso or a Purosangue, or both, depending on the mood of the day, maybe. I'd probably grab both, honestly, because they're both awesome and worth owning, in my opinion. So yeah, that'd be the dream, but I think, yeah, lots of fun stuff like that. But again, more realistic, reliable stuff. GX, Land Cruiser, I think would be really good. And anything with a good all-wheel drive system. And Anthony says, my TLX has a really hot third stage seat. I rarely need it, but my wife's 3-stage in the CX5 is really weak. Interesting. Yeah, I think I remember Mazda's not being super strong when I had the CX5 earlier this spring, but I don't remember it being terrible. But that's interesting. I think it also depends on what kind of surface you're heating. If you're heating really thick leather, it's a little harder versus Alcantara or cloth. I've found that a lot of times when it's cloth seats that are heated, those really get hot because it's thinner and it really gets you toasty. So those are actually, ironically enough, I think cloth, cheaper heated seats sometimes are some of the toastiest ones out there. And Good Stick says, my Hyundai Venue has heated seats, yet my buddy's BMW 228i Coupe doesn't have heated seats. Yes, the good old BMW nickel and diming and making you check a million boxes on the option sheet there. And Truck and Car Guy, thanks for stopping by. And Luke says, how much slower does all-wheel drive make a vehicle if they have the same powertrain? I'm worried my 25 Maverick Hybrid all-wheel drive will be slow versus the front-wheel drive. I mean, if we're talking like 0 to 60 times, you accelerate harder with all-wheel drive, and so typically, I mean, not always, because there's a few exceptions, but typically all-wheel drive will launch harder and therefore be faster to accelerate, in every condition versus a comparable front-wheel drive one where it has to manage wheel spin and maybe traction control cuts in if you have a lot of power to kind of, tone that down a little bit. So that's I think honestly, yeah, you'll be better off with all-wheel drive. I don't think it should really be any slower at all. Yeah, I don't think you should worry too much. Some cars, they downgrade the power if it's all-wheel drive or there's other things going on, but generally speaking, all-wheel drives are going to give you a faster acceleration. And then once you're up to speed and you're doing like highway passing and things like that, there's no difference. It's all the same there, so it should be good. And B Mitchell says I might have to have him take a page out of the Toyota Shills book and point him to a GR Corolla. My brother's number two choice in 17 was a Ford Focus RS. He likes his manuals and hot hatches. Oh, then absolutely he should go for a GR Corolla. Absolutely. That is, that's going to be my recommendation for that. And let me see. And I see TFI is also saying that. About the Mark 7. Yeah. So yeah, if we're talking about the GTI and wanting a manual there for your brother, yeah. If he's okay with all-wheel drive, doesn't need the front-wheel drive in the GTI, then yeah. GR Corolla is way more fun than GTI and Golf R, in my opinion, regardless of the price. And let me see. Danny says, I'm going to be getting my permit soon. My last driving lesson was Thursday over last week. And like I said about the bad drivers, it was highway 20 miles down Route 35 in New Jersey and GSP driving on the Parkway. That's cool. Yeah. I'm glad that you're getting some driving time there under your belt, and hope that it goes well and hope you pass your license test. I don't know how long the waiting period is there in New Jersey. I think it's 6 months of permit here in PA before you can get your license. But glad to see you're getting some experience there and hopefully continuing to be a safe driver there. And good success for the summon feature. I got no disclaimers, just saw the feature pop up and used it. Interesting. So I guess we'll have to search online and see what people are saying as far as whose liability that is if something were to happen. Interesting. And the good stick, Truck and Car Guy says, spotted an R32 GTR at a local mall earlier today. Nice. Yeah, they're still pretty rare. I know there was a season there where a bunch of them were like all over the place, but I feel like they've now kind of chilled out with their hype now that, R34s are becoming available and R33s have been available, so I think there's, some of that kind of lessening the demand on the R32s, but that's awesome to see. It was still so fun to, I drove one many years ago and did a review on one, and such a cool car. And Danny says, go so fast. The speed limit is 55. People push 80, close to 90 in the left lane. Yeah, PA is wild. I mean, it's definitely gotten worse this decade where people used to be a little more, I think, cognizant of the speed limits. And now, yeah, it's same thing. 55-mile-per-hour speed limits are a lot of the places around here. And people will blow past me like I am standing still when I am going over the speed limit still. And it's kind of funny. You can actually see this if you watch my car reviews recently and you see the highway segments where, I don't want to film myself like speeding a bunch. So I am not always doing the speed limit maybe necessarily, but going close to the speed limit, being respectful of the speed limit, I guess you could say. And I mean, you see like the forward facing camera, you see even just when I'm talking, people blowing past me, like not like lightly passing, like blowing past me like I'm standing still. And it's like all the time. It's no wonder that, traffic fatalities have gone up, even though cars are safer. I think we have a little bit less distraction these days as well, now that we have, CarPlay and stuff versus, 10 years ago when everyone was having to stare at their phones and stuff. But it's just the speed, and speed does kill. It makes everything more severe when you're going faster. So, yeah, it's crazy the amount of people with this. It seems like the cops are not enforcing speed limits as much as they used to. I mean, in some cases I don't really blame them, and it's not like I'm complaining about, not getting speeding tickets or whatever, but like, there's I seem like there's a little bit less enforcement of that. And I think maybe some people are catching on to that and being like, okay, well, because I've seen people like blow past cops 15, 20 over, which used to be like, you do that to a cop, like that's a death sentence, like you are done. And now like I literally like I'll be sitting there in the right lane, be like, oh man, like because I have Waze running, and Waze told me a mile ago that like there's a cop there, and I see someone just blow past me. I'm like, oh, they're gonna get nailed. This is gonna be crazy. And they go boom, right past the cop. Cop doesn't move. I'm like, what? Like, you're not gonna go for that guy? Like, they were definitely like, that's a nice juicy ticket, but not happening anymore as much. So again, I'm kind of conflicted about that, but it's an interesting observation. I'm sure many of you have probably seen that as well. But let me see. I see Kabo also says, I've been a subscriber for years. I'm glad you're still at it. Thank you for being a subscriber so long. And yeah, I had someone else too just comment recently and be like, holy crap, I haven't seen this dude forever. He's still doing reviews. And it's kind of unfortunate how the YouTube algorithm has kind of buried me for a lot of people that used to really like the channel and still probably do, but just so it kind of falls off the radar for whatever reason, whether that's YouTube or them just watching other stuff or what. But it's crazy. But thanks so much for being a subscriber for so long. And TFI says, I did some research on the GR Corolla, and the model year 25 doesn't come with BBS forged wheels. The blue flame color is no longer available. And that being said, I think blue flame model year 24 models are going to hold value. I think they probably will as well. And so I thought the forged wheels, yeah, I mean, I guess because I just did some research because I was filming my review on the automatic one this week, and that embargo is dropping here this coming week. So stay tuned for my thoughts on automatic GR Corolla this coming week. But yeah, it's a shame that they really, watered down the color palette. And I'm hoping we get some more fun colors eventually, but for now, it's red is your color option, if you don't want the grayscale stuff. So, it's unfortunate. There's always wraps these days, but it's, I complained about this also with Civic Si. Same deal. You can get red, otherwise it's grayscale. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe for these performance models, they can't justify colors, but you think especially performance cars, people will be more open to like fun colors versus your average, crossover and stuff. So, and I feel like Toyota's done well with offering colors, in the past. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is there. At the event, I brought it up to one of the Toyota executives and was like, I'd love to see some more colors here. I'm sad to see Blue Flame going away. And they never really, again, they can't talk about future stuff or, say anything. So I didn't get anything out of them as far as why that is, or if there's any hope for people that enjoy colors. But, I mean, Toyota does a lot of special editions and things. So I'm hoping, if not this year, maybe next year, or, I don't know what the future is of GR Corolla as far as its lifespan, but hopefully they'll offer some more, fun stuff at some point. We'll see. And let me see here. I see we got some more super chats that came in. So let me grab these. So Sean, thank you so much for a super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, George Carlin pointed out, when you're driving, everyone is either an idiot who needs to move it or a total maniac. Well, this idiot speed up. Whoa, look at that maniac. Slow down. That's a very good point. It's a good observation. George Carlin was a brilliant, brilliant comedian. Always appreciate a George Carlin quote, but yeah, that is a very good observation. There's also another one, Ellen DeGeneres. She, is an enthusiast, and again, I know there's lots of, opinions, mostly negative about her these days, but in her one stand-up a while back, she also complained about people turning. And she was like, everyone turns off so slowly. And she always got annoyed about it. And I can relate to that sometimes as well. And the thing that I stuck in my brain is she always says, I just imagine that all these people must be transporting a bowl of soup. They must have a bowl of soup in the passenger seat. And that's why they're all driving so carefully and so gently, because they can't spill their bowl of soup. And that's another one that I kind of keep in mind. Like every time someone's like taking forever to turn off the road, I'm like, wow, they must have a bowl of soup there. I just have to justify it in my own brain as far as like rationalizing why in the world someone is turning so slowly. But that's another fun comedian observation there. But yeah, great quote there. Thanks for sharing that, Sean. Thank you for the super chat as well. And Brian, thank you so much for being a member for 2 months now. He says, "Gotta go, Matt and chat. Have a good night." I appreciate that. Thanks so much for stopping by, Brian, for your generosity and for all your support. I really appreciate it, and hope you have a great week here. And let me see. So, getting back to the other member questions here. So, let me see. Came says, "Sorry, it was my first time using it." The super chat says, "My question was, do you feel going from a front wheel drive vehicle to a rear wheel drive is quite the change? Currently driving a Mark 6 GTI, wanting a 2021 IS 350 F Sport rear wheel drive." Um, it's definitely a switch. Yeah, if you've never driven rear wheel drive before, it also comes down to your driving style. If you're a very cautious driver that like doesn't get on the gas very early coming out of a corner, or punching it, turning in an intersection or whatever, you might not really notice much of a difference if you're just accelerating in a straight line, especially if you live in an area that has pretty decent weather, where you're not driving in rain or snow. You're not going to really notice much of a difference in the drive in a straight line. But really, whenever you are in a dynamic situation, either on, a windy road, or even just, again, hitting the gas early, coming out of a corner or whatever, that's where you will really feel it. But it's just a learning process. I think an IS350 would be a good car to learn on because, there's not a ton of torque from that V6. It's an old school kind of motor where you really have to rev it out. So that's nice for a rear wheel drive learning experience because it means that you have to work harder to get the car to oversteer. I mean, they will certainly oversteer, and if you're not careful with your throttle inputs, it can do it. Obviously, if you have all the traction and stability control systems on, it will also cut that so that you're not going nuts, but you might still get a little wiggle in the back end that you aren't used to from a front wheel drive vehicle. But with a V6 in that, you really got to rev it out. So I mean, you're gonna have to really punch it and drive it like you still have to really kick that back end out and get that. And again, even if you really want a lot of rotation, you're gonna have to turn off the traction and stability control to really get that going. So with modern systems, you'll be fine. If you were in something older, I'd say there's a little bit more of a learning curve and having to like respect the car and all that. I think all that still applies, but again, you have a much tighter safety net there to make sure that things don't get out of hand. So it should be fine. And then you just have to kind of push it a little bit. I recommend, if you can, go into a parking lot on a rainy day, a deserted parking lot, and try to slip it. Because I think, one of the fun things about rear wheel drive is playing with that back end. It adds a whole new level of fun that you don't get with front wheel drive. But it also can bite back. And even if you're just in bad weather conditions and, you're not expecting that, again, you have the stability control to save you for the most part. But it's nice just to know how to kind of catch, the back end in a rear wheel drive car. So I'd recommend going into a parking lot, turning everything off, and spitting out a few times just to see where those limits are of your car, learning that limit. If you have the luxury of going to a driver education kind of course, there's a lot of really good ones that kind of teach you that as well. If you don't want to do it in your own car, or you would like someone to help you with that, and you don't have a buddy or someone who's used to that. Like I've done a few different things, like the Cadillac V Performance Driving Academy. Some of these you have to like own the vehicle to do it, so it's not super accessible. But like Bondurant, and I think they've now changed their name, but a lot of these driving schools, like with Bondurant, they had like a rig where we had a Challenger that was on like shopping cart wheels, essentially, like tiny little dolly wheels. And there was hydraulics lifting tires at will. And so, we'd be going through a corner, and then all of a sudden the instructor in the passenger seat would hit a little button for the hydraulic to like go up and like lose contact patch on like one of the wheels just a little bit. And then all of a sudden I'm like sliding, or it'll do both at the same time. And all of a sudden, like, you gotta catch it. And like, there's some really fun programs out there, especially coming into the winter here. There's some winter driving programs, especially if you really want to, I know I'm probably way over answering your question here, but there's some really fun things like that you can do if you want to have a lot of confidence in your car, in rear wheel drive situations, whether it's, again, wintry, or if you're in the middle of the desert, even just for that freak rainstorm, being able to drive with confidence. There's a lot of great programs like that. But even like, that was one thing I did that was fun with the Ferrari 296. We did one of the like Ferrari's like driving school there for owners, and that was another thing where we were on a wet skid pad in a 296, and it's like, okay, now try and spin it out and then try and catch it. And that car was tricky to catch it because it's so much power and so much grip that whenever it goes, like, it really goes. So you got to be really quick to catch it. It's one of my favorite driving exercises, though, of doing that. But again, did it with the V's, Cadillac V's, did it with the Ferraris, did it with the Challengers at Bondurant. It's so fun. So again, much over explaining there, but lots of fun ways to get that experience. But even again, parking lot with your own car, Zurich parking lot is great. But it's really not bad. I mean, I cut my teeth on the BRZ. I had all-wheel drive cars for my first few years of driving until I got the BRZ, and that's another lower horsepower car, not a ton of torque, so it didn't get away from me. I had to really try to kick the back end out in that thing, and it's the same kind of thing. Versus if you were to hop into even like an IS 500, for example, or the muscle cars or whatever, where you got a bunch of torque down low. You step on that thing just a little too much, even low RPMs, and it'll just kick the back end out pretty easily. So those are more of a harder learning curve. I think IS 350 is a great starter rear-wheel drive car, and yeah. So if you are going to go for it, I highly recommend it. I think it's a great upgrade too in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's going to be heavier than the GTI, but I think it's a great switch. I highly endorse people trying rear-wheel drive. I mean, every drive configuration has their perks, but I'm biased, I guess, but rear-wheel drive to me is my favorite still, even though there's some really cool trick all-wheel drive systems that are a blast in some cars like the Audi RS3. But rear-wheel drive and mastering that yourself is really enjoyable. Anyway, thank you again for the super chat there, Kaim. And Michelle says, the heated seats in my 24 Jetta get pretty warm. There are 3-level heat, so guessing 3-level seats do get hotter. Cool. Yeah, it really just comes down to the manufacturer there. And Good Stick says, speaking of heating, I remember back in 2008, we rented a Chevy Uplander minivan. We had 7 people in the car. It was summertime in Orlando, and the air conditioning broke. We had to use paper to cool. That is... it sounds very uncomfortable. I forgot about the Uplander completely, actually. That's hilarious. Man. I miss the days when more companies did minivans, though. Let me see. Luke says, what is your favorite upgraded sound system from the factory? Like Ford B&O, Toyota JBL, Honda Bose. I mean, the Bose systems are very good. I think my favorite stereo that blew me away the most is the top AKG you can get in the Escalade. That, I think part of it's also because of the largeness of that vehicle, but it has just such an impressive soundstage with they have the full speaker array like in the dash pretty much in that thing. You have speakers in your headrests. I mean, especially the 3D effect. The first time I, listened to my favorite music in that thing, I was floored. Like, it was like, holy crap, is this impressive? Really, really good. Now, if we're talking like mainstream, non-luxury brands, the Honda Bose is really top notch. Also, Mazda Bose. Honda and Mazda Bose are really, really good. I think Mazda has a slight advantage if you like bass heavy stuff, because Mazda does a really cool thing where they put the bass drivers that are usually, in the doors there, they put those in the footwell area instead. And you will see if you look on modern Mazdas, there isn't a speaker in the bottom of the door in the typical place like you usually see in other vehicles. And they say it's because it gives them a cleaner sub hit, and that sound is more clear in those, having that in the firewall there and kind of in the footwell versus in the door where it can rattle more in the door. And I think that's really genius, and I think it actually works and it's effective. So I think Mazda is still the top as far as more mainstream stuff, in my opinion. And that goes for basically Mazdas across the board. Every Bose system and every Mazda is really good, in my opinion, especially the newer stuff, but all of it's really good. And then Honda's, again, very good now. They finally have the Bose upgrade in some of their vehicles. Definitely a top-notch system. Toyota JBL is actually one of the worst, in my opinion. I'm consistently let down by Toyota JBL. I'm consistently let down by the Volkswagens. What do they have? Is it a kicker or something? What is the Fender, I think is, or maybe they switched from Fender. I don't know. But Volkswagens, all their upgraded stereos were usually garbage, in my opinion. Actively, worse than some non-upgrades from some other companies. And again, Toyota JBL is also disappointing to me. Ford B&O can be pretty good in some vehicles. Like our Maki actually has a very good sound system, in my opinion. But then in the Mustang, honestly, it was actually pretty crappy. And that was also a branded B&O thing. And I mean, I love the Mustang, but I think most Mustang owners will tell you it is not a very good stereo. It has a giant sub in the trunk, but I mean, even like trying to play the Bullet theme, like the Bullet soundtrack, the actual 1960s, like jazz heavy, bass heavy, dong 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 dong, like that is terrible in the Bullet. It's unfortunate, like playing like the theme that they play, leading up to the chase in the Bullet movie, like it's just like Rattle City in the back of the Bullet. Whenever I had it, it was not the best experience, unfortunately. So yeah, I think those are the top ones I can think of. The Bose systems, there, the AKG. If you go for higher end brands like the Audis, the B&O stereo in the Audis is fantastic, which is an actual proper Bang& Olufsen, which is kind of higher than the B&O thing that Ford has. Bang & Olufsen is really good, and their top systems, especially like talking about stuff in like the A7, A8, Q7, Q8, those like top end ones, really, really good. Because in those we're talking about like a $5,000 stereo that has a bunch of advancements and really, really good. So I think those are probably the ones that stand out in my mind. I'm sure there's a few that I'm forgetting that are pretty good. I mean, the Mercedes stereos are pretty good. The Burmester, the top Burmester stereos are pretty good. Like in that E-Class all-terrain that I had, the E450, that was really impressive. And that one stood out to me because that was the first vehicle where it actually vibrates the seat. Like the seat back turns into like a subwoofer of sorts. It's not quite as violent as you'd imagine, but it is like pronounced like it really is immersive. Like, that's why they call it 4D stereo, the Burmester 4D, where it actually vibrates the back of your seat. And like listening, I really like a lot of bass heavy stuff, whether it's like EDM stuff or even just pop or regular rap or whatever. Those bass heavy tracks really felt cool in that. So that is one of my favorites. It's fun. I don't know if I would get tired of it after more than a week. It might be something that's like a little overboard after a while, but it's super immersive. And if you are like into your bass, like there's no like that feels like you're actually like at a concert or something, because it's like actually rocking your body as you're listening to it. So that's another one of the favorites, but I think those are top ones I can think of. Another regular one, ELS, the ELS stereos and the Acuras, which they're now getting rid of for Bang & Olufsen. But I actually thought the ELS ones were fantastic. And RDX and MDX, that is a really fantastic, especially the Type S ones that have like the upgraded stereo, really top notch as well in those. Anyway, moving on here. Great question though, Luke. Dylan says, finally got to see an Ineos in person. Looks nice. And the owner was super chill with all the questions I had. That's awesome. It's funny you mentioned the Ineos because, first, my sister-in-law a few days ago was like, I saw this thing. It's crazy. I've never seen one of these before. It was an Ineos Grenadier. And then my wife just saw one the day after and was like, look what I saw. Isn't this crazy? And I'm like, two times in a row, I've had people spotting these things this week. And then hilariously, 2 days ago, I also saw one. So this was the week of the Ineos Grenadiers. Just everywhere, and everyone let me know they saw them too. So that's funny. You're now the third person who's told me they've seen one this week, which is hilarious. So thanks for that. That's gonna get a good laugh hearing that as well. So yeah, it's cool to see them out and thriving. A new company that is doing really well, I think. And I'm happy to see them making it happen. And it's always great to give people more choices. And for people who want something more hardcore than a regular Defender, which I actually do have a Defender this week, actually finally getting some Land Rovers here and getting to try out the Defender after, what has it been, 4 years or whatever they've been out. But so excited to finally try one here. And it's actually really good. And it's really fun. Again, you will see that one towards the end of this year. That one's going to jump the line a little bit because that's a 2024 and I don't want to post it in 2025, but that one will be coming here probably in December. So, but yeah, I haven't driven an Ineos yet. I wouldn't mind trying one out someday, but I'm not rushing to do that either because I feel like they're not selling a ton of them, but I probably wouldn't get that many views, but I think it'd be fun to drive. Grant says, did you see the Rivian commercial with the Hoff about the limited Knight Rider add-ons this month? I did. That's very cool to see. And there's also not only the Knight Rider one, but there's two other ones, including a Time Machine one for Back to the Future that has it turn into like the Time Machine, computers there, and it plays the theme song. And I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. So that one especially, but I mean, the Knight Rider one is also super sweet with the way it even does the light in the front and stuff. That's the fun stuff. Like, these are the ways to make these EVs more fun and more customizable. Again, you can do that in a gas vehicle as well, but you have more ability with the sounds and stuff in the EVs. And I love it. I absolutely love those kinds of movie and TV tie-ins. And it sucks that Rivian doesn't have CarPlay because these fun little things, like I would really be open to owning Rivian if it had CarPlay. That's literally the only holdup, aside from price, of course. But like Beth really likes the styling on the R2, and that's going to be coming online, I think, here around 2026. Our lease is up on the Mach-E in 2026. We will see how money's doing, if I could even afford that, at that point in time. But like if we could afford it, or if the deals are good out there, like they are currently for EVs, like if they had CarPlay, like R2 would be a serious contender for Mach-E replacement. And I mean, it still could be, and I would like to think that maybe they will, open that up someday. But it seems like they're very against CarPlay, and they think they can do it better. They can't. Simply for texting. Voice texting is not as good with Series Eyes Free versus being able to pick your conversation. Because a lot of times, like for me, I have like multiple unread messages. And so I can't just be like, okay, well, last time I looked at my phone, I think this person texted me and then this person. Like I need to like see on the screen, like here are the options of who you need to text back. Click on it and then start doing your voice dictation. No one does that. No, Tesla doesn't do that. Rivian doesn't do that. None of these, even GM with their, we don't need CarPlay, like texting sucks in all of them. It just does. Unless you know who you want to speak to and you want to just, voice that out, that's great. But for me, it just, in addition to all the other reasons why, like I've ranted in my Blazer EV video about why, CarPlay is I think something you really need to still have for a large majority of people who surveys say really still want that feature. Anyway, I won't go on a tangent about Rivian, but yes, I saw that. That's super cool. And it really sucks that Rivian doesn't have CarPlay because I would totally go for one of those, I think, in the future if they did. And Cam Jim says, how about less complicated modes for the 5N as far as one of the flaws? Yeah, it is a little complicated going into all the screens there. So yeah, that's probably a better flaw than the stuff that I proposed. So appreciate the help there, Cam. Sorry it's half an hour late, but yeah. Let me see. Ford Enthusiast says, Matt, I'm more than likely going to. Okay, yeah, you did the super chat, so already got that one. And let me see here. Where were we? Jazz says, Matt, your thoughts on Lexus NX versus Lincoln Corsair? I could go up to a Nautilus if you strongly favor it. So I don't have experience with the Corsair. I've driven the Escape that it's based on, but I have not driven the Corsair. It's going to come down to, again, what your priorities are. That's always the bottom line is, what's better for me might not be better for you. And, everyone has different needs and wants. I will say that if you could go up to the Nautilus, to me, the Nautilus, if you just want a rolling sofa that is super luxurious, Nautilus is one of the best out there for that. And I think the tech is fantastic in the Nautilus. The looks are fantastic. I love that it comes in a hybrid. Obviously, the NX and the Corsair do as well. But, NX is nice. My biggest complaint, I just don't love how Lexus integrates some of the safety stuff. And especially their forward cross traffic alert, which you can turn off, but it's super annoying. So I kind of honestly argue going for a lower trim NX or just turning off that stuff if you want to have a loaded up one. But I'd say NX is the way to go if you want to have the most reliable one. I think I'd be more confident in driving the NX for 10 years versus the Corsair. I think Corsair also has the potential to be very reliable, though. A lot of those mainstream Fords and Lincolns are very good. Lincoln does have very high reliability ratings according to Consumer Reports and stuff. And especially if you go for a hybrid, I'm not sure if you're a shopping hybrid, but since they offer that in the Corsair, Ford's hybrid systems have proven themselves to be very durable with all the Escape taxi cabs that they've had running around San Francisco, New York, LA, whatever. They're all 400,000 miles. Still going super strong for like first gen Escapes pretty much. So, I have full confidence in both of those brands. Honestly, I think Nautilus also could be, very solid and reliable. Tech maybe might be glitchy someday. I don't know, but if you can go up to a Nautilus, I'd rather have a Nautilus than the NX and the Corsair, just to keep it short and sweet. That would be the way I would go, honestly. And Goodstick says, in the future, when more and more cars become autonomous, do you think manufacturers will discontinue the non-performance versions of their models, like how Volkswagen only offers GTI and Golf and R models for Golf? I think that, it would make sense to be like, yeah, sure. If you're just cruising at the speed limit, autonomously all the time, then, what do you need performance for? So yes, That I think as far as mainstream performance stuff goes that is made in volume, yes, I think that will go away eventually, as you know, once things get autonomous, whenever that happens. Um, but I think that you will also see an increase in performance models, you know, again, for the more expensive brands and, you know, again, for people who have their performance cars essentially turn into horses and how horses are now of being a recreation thing for fun. That's an engagement thing that you want to, you know, be involved in. You know, I think you're going to see that. But I think also, you know, there is room for autonomous cars that, you know, aren't driven by people that are also performance oriented. We've had, I think actually was maybe Audi or Porsche or, you know, one of these brands talking, a few brands have been talking about this idea or kicking around this idea of having the car take you for a hot lap. I don't know if any of you have been fortunate enough to take a hot lap with a pro driver ever in your life. I'm obviously very fortunate. I've done that quite a few times. That is wild and so much fun. And if you could have the car autonomously, you know, flying around on its own, um, doing all this stuff, and you're just along for the ride, I think it'd be really fun. And there's also companies talking about not even like full autonomy, but having like intense driver assist, where like you have like you have in Forza or something like that, where you have a driving line projected onto the head-up display on the windshield, showing you here's the line, and then having the car take over some parts of it, or showing you where you can go faster, or you know, just enabling you to go quicker with some of those autonomous features. Um, you know, so I think there's some of those types of things where you could have a varying degree of, you know, do you want a bunch of assistance? Do you want no assistance? All the assistance, you know, and still have fun in an autonomous world. Obviously, there would be no room for that on the roads. This would be like, okay, like the car knows it's now on a track, and now you have, you know, the Stig driving your car autonomously, you know, just flying around, you know, with a perfect lap every single time. So I think that there is going to be some of that kind of stuff as well for people who choose to, you know, go for that ride versus the gratification of doing it yourself. But I mean, that seems like an idea that companies are actively looking towards going to. And I think, you know, we even just saw, it was just like a fun, I think it maybe is for SEMA, or it's just like this fun thing I just, you know, we just saw recently. They think Toyota posted up about like an autonomous drifting Supra. They, you know, it's obviously just like a custom thing, that's very experimental, but like there's like a 700 horsepower Supra that autonomously drifts. And like, I'm not a pro drifter. I mean, I can slide around a car a little bit, but I'm not a pro drifter. I don't have those opportunities, unfortunately. But if I could hop in a Supra that could autonomously drift for me, I mean, again, that takes a lot of faith and trust in the car. But if we get to an autonomous future where that stuff is super reliable and safe and consistent, that's fantastic. I've ridden in drift cars in the past. It's a blast. And if I could just hop in and go for a fun drift ride in my car, you know, with no driver needed, like that's fantastic. So, you know, I think that's something absolutely that could be, you know, a fun part of the future. So it's not just all bleak, you know, autonomous pods rolling around at the speed limit everywhere you go. You know, there could be some fun track opportunities there for sure. And That's a great question, though, Good Stick. Let me see. Luke says most tires from the factory don't last long. My 2017 Ford Fusion original tires were done in around 20,000 miles. Wow, that is bad for. I mean, I've heard that from some people that other just OEMs just don't, or all OEMs just don't have tires that last super long. And some people have even said that like factory tires actually, and I know this for a fact, some cars have like a specifically calibrated version of that tire for that manufacturer. It's you know, just a unique blend or whatever for them, but that it's, you know, a different thing that's installed from the factory versus you buying the tire off the rack and, you know, installing it like that. They're not really the same exact tire. So, you know, I think that there's some of that certainly we do see. So that's a good point. Mike says 13,000 miles. How many times did they get rotated twice? So they actually haven't been rotated, because I think Ford calls for rotating them at 10,000 miles, which admittedly we did not do. But by 10,000 miles, they already were in bad shape. So it's like it didn't even make it to like the rotation time before it needed, you know, something to be addressed there. So I honestly don't think rotating them would have saved them in the last 3,000 miles. But Linda says that's crazy on the Maki. tires. I had 40,000 on my Mustang tires. Yeah, feel like that's usually what you could expect out of most tires these days is at least like 30,000. Um, TFI says 5:30 Beth doing takeovers in the Stang. Yeah, I mean, that thing's all-wheel drive, so it does not let you really slip it very much at all. So that's the thing. I really have no clue. Like I said, even if I tried, even in the Bullet, again, they lasted longer in the Bullet for the rears and that thing. So I don't get it either. I know the Maki is especially bad because those tires really get punished just because they're only 225s and stuff like the Ioniq 5, the EV6, like they do 245s. Blazers, I think 245s or 255s too. Yeah, I think actually at some wheels for the Blazers, like 275 is an insane amount of tire on those. So, 225s on a vehicle that weighs, 5,000 pounds or whatever. I mean, those tires get punished just with regular driving. But so I don't know. But again, people do get longer mileage in their Mach-E's, so I don't know what our problem is. But it's not Beth doing takeovers, though, unfortunately. That'd be fun as long as they're the responsible, safe takeovers and not the actual cringy menace to society takeovers we see out there. But Ford Enthusiast says that sucks about your tires. Hope Ford changed what type of tires they put on the 24. I don't think they did. So again, be prepared for a healthy budget there for tires. And B. Mitchell said the manufacturers and especially trucks seem to be utterly clueless when it comes to real winter. We keep getting all this play in the sand stuff, but the tires and wheels are crap in winter. Yeah, it is really funny how that's the case because, again, these mud and sand tires, again, if you're an actual off-roader, okay, great. But it's such a minority versus the amount of people that are going to be encountering snow in these things. You would think like having at least like a snowflake, like snow approved tire there for actual real snow driving. You'd think they'd bother to do that, but like a lot of these don't even have that approval. It's crazy. And Jordan says no more SUVs, no more SUVs, compact or otherwise. Bring back the sedan. I agree. I wish more people would enjoy sedans, but yeah, everyone's got different lives with different needs, I guess. B. Mitchell says only the full size pickups and lower trims seem to come closest to addressing winter effectively. Interesting. I didn't know there was a real big difference there. That's cool. Austin says, hey, Matt, I saw the Straight Pipes reviewed the ID Buzz. They loved it, but not for the price. Range is also a real letdown, in my opinion, especially for the performance. Yeah, I haven't watched their video yet, but yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind, because everyone's going to say the same thing about the Buzz. It's the price. The price is too high. It's a sticker shock thing. Part of that is just, again, no one's adjusted for inflation still. Everyone is still shocked by every price of every car out there right now. And, I think performance is irrelevant, and honestly, I don't think any ID Buzz buyer cares about the performance at all. And I think it'd take a lot of bravery to even go fast in an ID Buzz based on the shape of it. But, so I think performance isn't even worth mentioning with the ID Buzz, to be completely honest, in my opinion, because no buyer is going to care about that in those. But I think price will get better. I think, the early adopters will pay, the markups or the MSRPs or whatever. But I think it's going to be the same as EV9, where once the early adopters grab them, you're going to see big discounts on them, I think, if they build them in decent volume at least. EV9s are like 10 grand off. And there's another one where it's like, oh, 70 grand for a Kia. And then it's like, well, now it's 60 grand for a Kia with 3 rows. And no one else offers a 3-row EV, honestly, aside from Buzz and, I guess Model X, and kind of Model Y, it doesn't really count. And I think that's about it. But, so it's one of those things where I think that we will see price correct itself. If it's too expensive, people won't buy it, and then it will come down in price. So I think if you're into the Buzz, but it's too pricey for you, wait a year or two, and then you'll be able to get one for a more reasonable price. Or if you want, just wait for it to go on the used market, because the second those hit the used market, like any of these other EVs, they're just going to plummet. I mean, there'll be some staying power just because, again, there is some novelty there, but it's not, it's going to depreciate fast. So I think for the unfortunate people who choose to actually purchase them and not lease them, which I would again recommend leasing. But if you're going to purchase them, wait for those things to get traded in, and then get a nice cheap ID Buzz. I know my mother-in-law actually, like, I don't know if she would actually go for one, but she's always loved Volkswagen buses. And I told her the price. She was like, oh man, and it's like, yeah, but I'm like, just wait another year or two, or maybe a lease deal, or something like that. I think it will come down. I think also, with the Buzz, there's no there's no base all-wheel drive one. If you want the base trim, which is still pretty well loaded up, you have to go with rear-wheel drive. You got to go up to the all-wheel drive. That's like almost like the launch edition. It's like one under the launch edition top trim just to get all-wheel drive. And it's too expensive. So I hope they come out with decontented versions, then come out with a cheap all-wheel drive one. I think that will certainly help them a little bit as well. Good Stick says an R34 GTT popped up at the meet last Thursday. I think you saw it on the Discord. Oh, nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. And yeah, the R34, I always swoon when I see an R34. Just the JDM, Fast and Furious, fanboy in me always gets excited every time I see one of those. So I'd love to have one someday. And Jordan, thank you so much for the super chat. Sorry I missed it until now. He says, as far as Stellantis, your absolute beneficial move. So I'm guessing you mean like best case scenario, or like what I would like to see them do. Maybe I think, for Stellantis, the thing I can hope for, sorry, I missed the other ones as well here. But as far as, Stellantis, I think they can benefit by doing some consolidating. I think that'll certainly help as far as consolidating brands, put Ram back in with Dodge, fold in Chrysler and, make the Pacifica Caravan. I think, that kind of makes sense. And it sounds like there's promising stuff for Chrysler, but there's no reason why those can't be Dodges. It's not like Dodges are cheap anymore anyway, with, the Charger being expensive and even Hornet, at least MSRP wise being expensive. I think that's, you don't need to have a Chrysler brand to justify expensive cars these days. So, and I think obviously on the European side, there's a lot of consolidation that can happen and a lot of overlap, Opel and Vauxhall. I think Lancia, as much as I love the brand and I wouldn't be happy to see them go, I think Lancia is kind of redundant in a lot of ways too. So I think they could certainly be folded into, one of the other brands there. And DS Automobiles obviously should go back to, was it Citroen or Peugeot, whichever one, is under that umbrella. Yes, I think some of that could certainly help tighten things up a little bit. And then, just again, pricing things right, trying to, do the best they can for the market while also, meeting the CAFE and Euro standards they need to meet. And it's tough though. I mean, they're definitely in a tough position in a lot of ways. But I think there's a lot of, low hanging fruit they could do to fix things too. And Jordan, thank you also for the other super chat earlier. I missed that. I apologize. You said future beneficial trends besides SUVs/compact or otherwise. I don't know of any upcoming trends that'll be beneficial aside from, again, the headlights, being a little lower there in the bumper, I think is a nice change. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, I think just, the more and more that we can automate the driving experience, even though that will, make people worse drivers, because if that stuff, goes down, then people are like, oh, wait, I haven't steered in 6 months. How do I do this again? I think there's some danger there, but I also feel like, again, people have shown that they just can't honestly be trusted behind the wheel for a lot of people. Sadly, they're not interested in the act of driving. They're bored with it, or they're, wanting to fly around at 90 miles an hour everywhere they go, whatever the case is. I think that it would just, be a safer world if, we had a lot more of that stuff automated for the people who didn't want to pay attention. For the people, give people the choice, don't force people into it. But if people voluntarily want to, hop in a cyber cab or whatever the case is, like, I'm all for it. Again, get these, inattentive drivers off the roads, or, into a car that is on the roads for them, doing that stuff. I think that would make things better, assuming, again, insurance rates don't go sky high for everyone that continues to choose to drive, which probably would. So there's a bunch of whole, catch-22s there and stuff. But I think, I'd like to see driving evolve so that it's just us enthusiasts that can actually be out there and enjoy it. And it can just be autonomous transportation for everyone else that doesn't care about that. But yeah, I can't think of any near-term trends really. It'll be great to see more of the hands-free highway driving stuff. Like Super Cruise becoming more widespread. I think as those hands-free systems, become more common, you will see, again, less left lane hogs, because like Super Cruise usually won't hog a left lane. So if you have all that automated stuff going and you don't want to bother turning it back on, I think you will see, technology will fix the left lane hog. And I talked about this a few weeks back in a weekly update, where Nissan, now even with their hands-on stuff, tells the driver, you've completed your pass, time to get back in the right-hand lane. And, it's one of those things where, we've tried laws that didn't work. We've tried other things, nothing can shame people into getting out of the left lane. So to have the technology do it for them. Unfortunately, that's kind of the world we live in now. Is when people can't do things right, we send in the computers to do it for them. So that's gonna fix some of our problems, probably create a whole lot more problems as well. But fix some of the problems there, and I think that'll be nice to see less left lane hogs as we see more automated highway driving. And thank you again for the super chat there, Jordan. And let me see, getting back to other member questions here. So, where were we? All right, we weren't as far back as I thought. Doing okay here, catching up on the member questions. So Luke says, I think some of the 55 mile per hour speed limits are outdated. There's stretches of highway where I'm like, why is this 55? It's the middle of nowhere. There's absolutely some of that, and PA is a lot of that. I mean, and that's one of the worst things. If like, so a lot of times my one sister-in-law lives in West Virginia, and so if we go down to visit her, we're driving through West Virginia where it's 70 mile per hour speed limits, and it's like, this is great. We feel like we're making good progress. We're moving at a good clip here. And then on the way back home, when we're, crossing over, basically as soon as you cross over to the border of the PA, it's a few miles in where it's like, okay, now we go from 70 to 55. And it does feel like you're crawling. It's like, I might as well get out and walk at this point. Like it feels so, aggravating to have to slow down to, lower speeds whenever you're, moving so nicely in other states. And so there is absolutely some of that. And there's, some of that where, again, it's set up that way to still be speed traps. And there's other cases where it's just like, why has this not been updated? Like there's here in Pittsburgh, there is a area called Neville Island, which is like a very industrial, like it's basically just a bunch of like scrap yards and factories and stuff. And it's a 4-lane, like straight road with hardly anyone around aside from, again, a few factory workers, but like it's not a populated area with houses really for most of it. And some of that is like 25 miles per hour. I'm not even like trying to be an idiot, but like I could safely, like absolutely, like no questions about safety, drive through there at 70 miles per hour. No problem. It's just like insane. And I mean, some people, do go pretty quickly, but like, there's some of that where, there is a lot of really outdated speed limits. And I think that's also part of why driving has gotten worse for people because, cars have gotten so evolved and so good with handling and so fast and powerful. Everything's fast these days, relatively speaking, and these speed limits should have been upped to accommodate that because I think now I know the idea is, yes, again, keep speeds low, therefore you have less severe accidents, and that still does apply. But on the upside, you have people that are not paying attention as much because there's no challenge anymore. It used to be that, you had to actually work at driving a car a little bit. It wouldn't go in a straight line perfectly. It wouldn't, do this, that, or the other. And you had to focus on the act of driving more. And that's not the case anymore in any modern car. And so you have people that are just bored at 55, and I don't blame them. I'm bored at 55 too. And so it takes discipline to not pull out your phone and start scrolling because, again, we can all do it in our sleep, pretty safely at 55, because we're in such capable vehicles these days. And so, I think that, if I were transportation secretary or whatever, I would raise speed limits in places where it's, acceptable and okay, but also, keep an eye on those traffic rates. And if people just then increase their speeding by another 15 miles per hour or whatever, and they just, go up as a sliding, buffer there, then I'm like, okay, well, like we need to make sure that like this stays under control. But it's just like a lot of these roads, they've never gone beyond 55. They've never even tried. And, it's unfortunate that, we're all just kind of stuck doing these slow speeds. And I think that's part of why there's so much distraction on the roads. But Austin says here in California, 80 is the normal in a 65. Yeah, absolutely. Same deal around here. Chuck and Car Guy says Arizona is terrible with that, considering we have 5 major highways in and around Phoenix. It's like that a lot of places where it's just, I feel like I also see like extremes where like there's more. I feel like I run into more people cruising in the right lane at the actual speed limit than I used to maybe a few years back, where it was more of like everyone kind of agreed on like 5 to 10 over, maybe 15 over was, the norm. And like, now it's like I see people either do 90 or like 55. Like there's no middle ground anymore, which makes it tough for passing. Is it's like, oh man, like I gotta, get around this person that's doing 55, but then I have to like get out of the way for this person doing 90. And like it's like you're playing a game of Frogger sometimes on the highway here. And it's just like it's yeah, it's just it's a change. I'm not used to it. It hasn't been like that, before this decade. It's kind of surprising, I think, at least to me. And Goth Rocker says, Matt, I agree. In PA, people fly past me all the time. Some of our highways should not be 55. Yeah. But today alone had a guy in a Civic easily doing 85 to 90. The big rigs also flying lately. Yeah, I have seen also the 18 wheelers flying too. And I guess they also, want to keep up with traffic. And, again, there's that whole debate of like, is it more safe to be going faster but keeping up with traffic and not impeding the flow of traffic? Or, but when you're talking about big rigs too, where it's, you got a lot of weight there and they can't stop as fast. So that does sketch me out a little bit more whenever I see 18 wheelers flying, or Cybertrucks or Hummer EVs or anything that's heavy that can do a lot of damage at some speed. But Ben says, hey Matt, what are your thoughts on the Mercury Marauder? Does it seem half-hearted or like a genuine performance take on the Panther platform? I mean, I think a lot of stuff from that decade you could view as half-hearted, kind of not, super thoroughly done. But I also like, look at stuff like that as a gift. Like they didn't have to do that. Why bother to make a cool Crown Vic, for a car that was, again, very pedestrian, taxi cab, cop car kind of thing. But I think that Mercury Marauders are awesome, like super, super cool. I'd love the review on someday. But I mean, again, it just shows there was enthusiasts there that pushed for this stuff, that got it made, got it approved, engineered it, and did it really well. I think, from just, again, the stuff that I've seen and read, I think Marauders are awesome. And yeah, it's a rare car to see these days, but every time I see one, it makes me smile. They're they're really, really cool. And Good Stick says, thoughts on e-bikes. They are the literal definition of motorcycles. I'm seeing a lot of them in Seattle, and they're growing in popularity. I've never tried one myself. I think in certain cases they can be really nice. Like whenever Beth and I went to France back in 2019, we did a bicycle like guided tour through Marseille, and that was kind of funny because the tour guide had an e-bike, but all of us were on regular bikes, and we were all very jealous of his e-bike after a while on some of these hills we were on and stuff. So I mean, there's certain instances where it makes a lot of sense. I think, it needs to, again, I think, be regulated a little bit more and kind of have some rules in place as far as where are these things acceptable, based on how much power they have, and, the low top speeds for a lot of these, e-bikes. And then a lot of them, like I just saw, like Matt Farah just had a newer one that's like a little more powerful and kind of is pretending to be like a motorcycle. It's not a full-blown motorcycle, really. It's more like a, very quick e-bike. But it's like, do you treat that like a regular motorcycle? Do you let it, drive on highways whenever these things have a top speed of maybe 70 on a good day? Before, like, where do you draw the line before it starts becoming a safety hazard or a nuisance to other drivers that obviously have more power and stuff? So, but then it's like, are they too powerful for the bike lane? I don't know. I don't know enough about that world to probably have an intelligent opinion on the whole idea of them. E-bikes, I think they're cool. And I think in certain instances they can make a lot of sense. But it's, you're kind of out there again, same deal as a motorcycle. So it's not something I'm interested in just because the safety factor is just not there for me. But I mean, I think it's a great idea if you want a cheap commuter and you want something that's, a little just, I don't know what the word is, honestly, just something a little different that's, you're comfortable with. It's not quite as extreme as a motorcycle. I think it's a cool option for a lot of people. And I can see why they're growing in popularity, especially with, again, car prices getting so expensive. And we're seeing, more and more people going for cheap cars like Mirages and Versas. And I think we even, to a, lesser extent, see the same kind of evolution, I guess you could say, of transportation with e-bikes. People being like, I can't afford a car, I'm going for an e-bike. And honestly, like, it's kind of funny because, you look at other parts of the world that, maybe have less of a middle class, you have a ton of people on bikes. Look at like Vietnam and countries like this where that's how everyone gets around it, and they have all these different contraptions to haul things on them, and all that. Obviously, again, we're not at Vietnam levels of transportation here, but just as an example of how that's the norm for large parts of the world. And so if they can figure it out, I mean, again, I think we could probably argue that their roads are not as safe as ours, but I think hopefully there's a way to kind of welcome the e-bikes, because I think it's a great way to give people mobility at a low price, but do it again in a safer way, so it's not just a free for all where we're having people on e-bikes just getting wrecked by giant pickup trucks or whatever. So I think it's a great idea. My buddy's actually really wanting one, and and we'll see if he picks one up someday. Maybe I'll try one out when he gets one. But they seem really cool. I mean, I know a lot of YouTubers have been like getting sent e-bikes for free to like review, and they just like are like, I want an e-bike, I'll just do a review on it, and they know the video is gonna bomb, but they just want the free e-bike or whatever, and they grab it. And so I've considered maybe if there's the right like a nice one that comes along and not just like some crappy knockoff one. Maybe giving it a try, but I don't really have a use for it. But it'd be fun just to give it a spin. Maybe it's a fun like April Fool's review or something. But yeah, they're cool. And Dylan says, empty parking lot in the rain is by far the most fun I had in my old Challenger RT. Yeah, it's the way a lot of us I think learned rear-wheel drive dynamics. So many fun days. Yeah, even as a teenager, whipping it around in my Legacy GT in the snow and seeing what the all-wheel drive system can do. Goth Rocker says the 2014 Jeep Cherokee headlight design. It was not that Jeep designers saw the future. They knew the regulations on headlight height was changing, so that is why 2014 they went to that design. But I feel like no one else did though, right? Like no one else. I think like Hyundai was maybe the next one, and they didn't even do anything till a couple of years, I think, after in their first vehicles that did that switch, right? Because I mean, I don't know if I think it took everyone like a few years. It really seemed like everyone was like, oh yeah, like let's hop on that. And then a few years later, as product cycles went through where you had the opportunity to change that, that's when you saw this new stuff. But I don't know, I could be wrong. I'm not as good at remembering every single one of those vehicles that when they all came out. But anyway, I see it is what it is. So you're spending way too much time on each question. Move on. All right. Yeah, I know I'm an over explainer. I will try and keep it brief here, but I think we're doing okay keeping up with member questions tonight. But I appreciate the honesty there. And let me see. Linda says, when I first had the EcoBoost and wanted to pull out quickly, the rear wheels cut loose. Thankfully, I reacted correctly, but oh my, thrilling since it turned out well. Yeah, it's and you just have to get used to it. And then, it is a lot of fun if you do, learn how to do it well. It can be really enjoyable. But Goose Stick says, what would 2013 Super WRX fan think of the new WRX and the fact that the Toyota Corolla is now performance oriented? In fact, it could replace the WRX hatchback, which ran until 2014. Absolutely. I think that's why I love GR Corolla so much, because it is the proper STI hatch successor. It's 300 horsepower, has the adjustable torque, with the diff, has a manual, and is a very boosty car that has to, rev, and, the boost is a little higher in the RPM band there. The new WRX is so punchy down low, which is great. You still have to ring it out a little bit, but yeah, that's exactly, to borrow from the Top Gear trio, I think James May in particular, like the GR Corolla gives me the fizz. Like it excites that enthusiast in me that is still very much there. Unfortunately, just that Subaru has not ignited that OG WRX passion in me like GR Corolla has. And that's why, again, every time someone gives me an excuse to talk about a GR Corolla, I sit here and praise it up and down until I run out of breath. It's just like it's fantastic. So yeah, I think that Subaru WRX fan is still alive and well within me, and GR Corolla is absolutely what Subaru WRX fan would be driving. And if I needed if I needed all-wheel drive, especially because I do love rear-wheel drive, but if I really wanted an all-wheel drive vehicle and I could afford it, like GR Corolla is almost certainly what I would have. Yeah, it's fantastic. And again, I could say more, but it's the stuff I'm going to say, I will say in my review here this week on the automatic version. But yeah, I mean, they had manuals on the drive launch as well, and I think the automatic is the only one covered by the embargo. So I will just say I was really happy to just drive a manual GR Corolla once again on this drive program, and I was like, man, like this is why I love these things so much. Every single dang time I'm in a GR Corolla, it's like, man, I need to get one of these in my life. It like literally gets me flustered just thinking about GR Corollas. I'm the biggest fanboy for that car now, I think. And it's funny, I was talking to Jack from Sandwich Geese, who has, the one, and he's, modded it, and he's shown some of the shortcomings of that vehicle, that platform, the all drive system in particular. And we were chatting with him. I'm like, I guess I just drank the Kool-Aid, man. I'm like, I still love it despite its, flaws of, not holding up the track abuse super well. I don't care because I would never track it anyway. But he's like, no, it's a great car. He still loves his. It's just it has some limitations. But for me, they wouldn't be limitations because I never would encounter them, and it's just. Yeah, manual GR Corolla. Not talking about the automatic, but the manual GR Corolla is so good. But stay tuned for my thoughts on the automatic this week. Could go either way. I'm going to keep it ambiguous. You can watch the video and see here this week my thoughts on the automatic version and whether Toyota did a good performance automatic or not. But let me see. A Silva says Bowers and Wilkins sounds amazing. That's another good one. I didn't mention earlier. Absolutely, Volvo, Bowers and Wilkins, a really top-notch system for sure. And also Bowers and Wilkins, even in some of the BMWs, is very good too. They do a lot of car companies do very good stereos these days. B. Mitchell says the only reason I got the B&O upgrade on my 19 Mustang GT was to get a CD player. I yanked the subwoofer in the trunk by the end of the second year I owned it to get more trunk space. Nice. Yeah, I stuck with mine, but I totally get it. And yeah, it is nice to have the CD player. I'm with you there. Michelle says Teslas also have really nice sound systems. I've never really tried a Tesla one. I'll have to maybe someday try one. I don't know if I'll ever review another Tesla, honestly. We'll see. It's just they've gotten so polarizing. It's just something I just don't want to deal with the comments. And I just, yeah, I think most of you know my stance on Tesla these days, but, Linda, thank you so much for a super chat. She says, here's a treat for your daughter. Has she decided on a costume yet? Yes, she has. She is a big Paw Patrol fan. So we are going to be Mighty Sky this year. So that's what she's going to be for Halloween. And so she's super into the Paw Patrol. It's really fun. And thank you so much, Linda, for the generous little gift there. And she is enjoying some of the early Halloween stuff we've been doing, getting some treats already. And she will have no shortage of treats. So thank you so much for that. Give her some more candy money there. And let me see other member questions here. So where were we? Good Stick says Ineos are now more popular than the new Z. True, although that is actually another one I forgot to mention. I saw another Z yesterday, and I was like, holy crap, maybe I'm actually starting to see them more often because, I saw one a few weeks back, and some of you said you've maybe seen one or two. And I'm like, okay, like now I'm seeing a few this fall. Like, this is good. I hope some people are actually buying them, even though, again, it's not my favorite for the money. Like, I hope that people are getting maybe some nice deals on them, or dealers are finally coming back down to earth with their prices. I don't know, but I'm happy to see a few more Z's out there. So, yeah, but hopefully some of you are seeing them as well. A Silva says, hey, Matt, did you know tomorrow's Back to the Future Day? I knew it was coming up soon, but I actually was meaning to look into that and see because I knew it was around here sometime. But that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for the reminder on that. Maybe tomorrow I will share my DeLorean, my Back to the Future DeLorean car review that I did way back in 2015 for Back to the Future Day. So thanks for a reminder on that. And I love Back to the Future. And we actually see if I can spin. So you can see our DeLorean, a Google DeLorean, or not Google, Lego DeLorean here that we got. We were building it a little bit more. We're almost done with it. We just have a little bit more to do, and then that will be all done. So my daughter and I are having fun putting that together. Austin says, hey, Matt, not car related, but what are some of your favorite things to do for Halloween? Any good haunted houses, trails? Not really right now because, these days with, our daughter's 3, so very low tolerance for actual scary stuff, and we don't want to traumatize or anything. So haven't done any actual scary stuff. Don't really get out a whole lot. Just Beth and I, unfortunately, with being so busy all the time, I'm working half these nights and stuff. But yeah, so don't have any recent experience with any good haunted houses or trails. One of my favorite things, I actually was just telling my buddy this not too long ago, back in college and stuff, we used to go to Hallow Scream at Busch Gardens. And that was always one of my favorites. They did a really good job. I don't know. I mean, it's been like over a decade since I've been, so I don't know if it's still as good as it used to be, but like really good food there, with kind of the Oktoberfest stuff. And then they did a really good job on all the scary stuff that they had, and just, people chasing after you and stuff. It was really fun. And we went to Kennywood here, and it's our Pittsburgh theme park. They also have like a haunted fright nights kind of thing, or whatever they call it. And we were leaving as like the sun was setting and that stuff was starting to come. We're like, oh, we gotta go before before it actually gets scary for our daughter. But it seemed like they had, pretty cool setup there as well. But don't have any good houses or trails. I think the one thing that I would like to do someday, I've never done it, but like the actual like legit creepy haunted stuff, like real abandoned castles or mansions, or things like that, I think would be really, the most riveting. And like, because I'm all about realism, so like stuff like that where it's like maybe this actually is haunted. It's kind of a fun thing. I had a professor in college who was convinced his house was legitimately haunted. It was like an old farmhouse in the middle of Virginia. And yeah, he would like come home. He was a single guy living all by himself, and he'd come home and like the cabinets would just be open. Like he said he had a friendly ghost like living there. It was like stuff was actually like open. Like he would be sitting in a room and the light would just like turn off, and they'd be like, oh man, and then it'd turn back on. And like not just like flickering lights, like it would actually like do it intelligently, according to him and his stories. Again, maybe he was just spinning a yarn for us, but he like legitimately was like, yeah, I live with a ghost and it's great. Like he's like, we have a blast. He pranks me all the time and it's fun. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about all that stuff, honestly, but it's just kind of fun to play along with that stuff. But Anthony, thanks for stopping by. Good Six says electric cars 20 years ago were horrible. Now they're a lot better. It took a long time for Tesla to improve the battery technology to what they are now. The same thing can be applied to hydrogen. I'd like to think so. He says hopefully by 2035, the hydrogen combustion engine is a viable replacement to gas engines. I'd like to see that as well. And, a lot of companies are working really hard and pushing for that. And we will see what happens. I think the key difference between adoption for EVs and adoption for hydrogen is that you need infrastructure for hydrogen. Like you need it, versus with, EVs, we can all plug in at home if you have a home, where you can charge. But, a large amount of people have homes where they can, park in the driveway, park in the garage, get a charge. We have workplaces where you can charge. That was the thing, is like, and people don't realize this. People always talk about, oh, well, we don't have enough charging stations. It's like 90% of EV drivers never fast charge, or fast charge like on a road trip or a vacation once a year. That's it. Like all of us, like the Maki never sees a fast charger. I think I can probably count on one hand the amount of time that thing has been plugged into a fast charger over the course of over 2 years now. Like everyone has a charger built into their house, even if it's not a fast one. I mean, our Maki, we're still just plugging it into the wall. We don't have a level 2. Even the electric press cars that I get, if they're small enough to fit in my garage, like I keep them topped off, just plugging it in every night. Like that, it's literally, do you have an electrical outlet in your house, in your garage? If you do, you can fuel up an EV. You can't say the same for hydrogen, and hydrogen obviously it's also, not only is it just like, the transportation of the fuel and stuff, but it's also like the requirements for hydrogen to keep it safe and to keep it, pressurized. And it's a very high tech, very expensive, heavier duty thing than gasoline. And honestly, I'd argue even more so than a fast charger, with a big thick cable. So like, that is the biggest problem, I think, with Tesla. Sure, they did a really good job with the supercharger network, but they had the advantage of, we had over 250 miles of range or whatever, and you could just, as long as you had a garage or a driveway, you could fill it up. And I think that is the huge difference. I'd love to, again, I have no skin in the game here. I would absolutely love to see hydrogen do well. And I think, again, I'm open-minded to whatever solutions there are out there to reduce the CO2 and, get us to a better place from an emission standpoint. And so it just comes down to, what it will be the best solution. But I think as we see battery tech advancing so quickly, like, Goldman Sachs saying that we should reach cost parity with gas powered vehicles in 2026 or very, very close to it. So no price premium in like a year and a half or less. With these next gen EVs coming in 2026. So, and we see how cheap used EVs are already. I mean, you can pick up a Maki just like ours for 25 grand. They're cheap vehicles now. So like, I think that EV now has too big of a lead for anything to overtake it for a long time. Especially once again, we get this second wave of adoption and people figure out, hey, I don't have to do oil changes anymore. Hey, it's super cheap to run this thing, aside from maybe tires. Like it is, again, it all comes down to money for people. And actually, the most recent Q3 sales data has shown this, that like once, like, companies that do these aggressive lease deals like Hyundai and stuff, once you start giving them away for $200 a month, everyone's concerns about EVs goes out the window. And they're like, yep, $200 a month. I'm in, sign me up. Like, it really all comes down to the price and the money component, and not only again purchase price, but again the amount that you save once you're actually in that ecosystem. So yeah, anyway, I think it's going to be uphill for hydrogen, but wish them all the best. There's a lot of really smart people working on it, so I have faith that maybe someday it'll happen. But we'll see. And let me see. Chad says, higher tech safety features are making people less attentive drivers already. If we go fully automated, it better be 100% because people don't pay attention as is. That's true. And that's why I think it's really important that we have these redundancies with these newer level 3 systems having LiDAR built in, like the Volvo EX90 having LiDAR, and seeing that in some of these others. I think that's really the best way to do it, is have multiple sensors, radar, cameras, and LiDAR. I think is the proper way to do this. Again, and Volvo, that's what they're doing. And we know Volvo is always a super safety-minded brand. And so that's why I trust them over like Tesla being like, oh, sure, let's throw out the radar and just use cameras. Like, cameras have their limits. I still am firmly believing that, cameras have their limits, especially, again, if you live in the Northeast and stuff like that. But anyway, and Augustic says 2035 is when new gas cars cannot be sold. Yeah, it depends on where you're at for that. I mean, again, that's some places it's 2035, some places it's elsewhere. It just all comes down to, again, and if those rules actually stand. Again, we got 10 years now. We'll see how things change and what happens. But let me see. And Shane says, also, Elon, let us drive you around in our autonomous car. Right? Yep. But it was totally safe on a closed movie set where people have done autonomous cars safely in movies for years, actually, and remote controlled stuff and all that. But yeah, I was not convinced personally at that seeing that event. But Car says, in the future, I'd love to get an electric car with sodium batteries rather than lithium, non-flammable, quick charging, cold tolerant, environmentally better. Any news on this? Heard of one from BYD. Yes. So actually, I just read a really interesting article this week. Motor Trend, I think it was Frank Marcus, who's like one of the engineering actual writers for Motor Trend, did a really good article on the state of EV batteries. So apparently there was a big like battery convention, and it actually like nerded out way farther than I even understand with my limited understanding of batteries. But if you're really interested in the update on that, he kind of breaks down all the different advancements that we are seeing and will see, come to production in the next couple of years. And there's so many. It was a pretty long article of all the different advancements that are coming. Sodium, I skimmed through the article because I didn't have time to read through the whole thing, but it sounds like to me sodium's kind of been put on the back burner because a lot of these lithium iron phosphate batteries are coming down in price so fast, and the materials are getting so much cheaper and easier to get, and we're having more options for where we get the lithium from. There's like, I think, a new lithium mine coming online in like Arkansas and a few other places. A lot of companies are buying up lithium production here in the States to, do it in a cheaper and better way. And so, but yeah, I think actually BYD already has a sodium battery in production, I think. And there's certainly some of those coming. And I think it's a great idea. I totally agree with you. I think sodium has the potential to ultimately be, the best battery tech for a good long while. But in the meantime, I think there's still some issues with them. Some companies are trying to work through. Again, maybe BYD has cracked the code since they're so far ahead on EVs in many ways. But while the other companies trying to figure it out, I think the LFP stuff is what we're going to see for some of these newer EVs coming in the more immediate future. And then again, solid state still is online for early 2030s. And I think sodium's kind of been talked about being around that time. But yeah, I don't remember the name of the article, but if you just look up, I think it was Frank Marcus, if I remember correctly, just Motor Trend battery convention or something, and Google that, and narrow it down so it's something in the past week or month, you should get an article there that is really good if you want the lowdown, much better than I can repeat here. So check that out if you're interested in that. Chad says the right lane is the new passing lane. In some cases, you are correct. Yeah. Ford Enthusiast says left lane hoggers will never disappear in New Jersey. Yeah, I'm sure there's some people that will just do it on principle and just override their computers and their Super Cruise or whatever and force it to stay in the left lane just because they enjoy inconveniencing others. But Truck Car Guy says, believe me, as a truck driver, I've seen many roads that have limits that seem outdated. I'm sure you've been burdened with many of those. And let me see. Luke says, I make deliveries in Neville Island. I know that road you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's bizarre. It's one of the really worst examples of that where like, this is just a cash grab, guys. And they do have cops on there a good bit, which is why you can't really just ignore the speed limit there. Because and it goes up to 35 at one point, but even 35 is far too low. 45 is a bare minimum, but I mean, I would again safely say let that be a 50 or 55, and I think that's totally fine. But yeah, Rafi says it's the left lane that bothers me, and honestly, the main cause of traffic. It's just I don't know. I'm so jealous of Europeans, especially Germany. The left lane discipline and just passing discipline. It's just so impressive, and it's a shame that we don't have better driver requirements and driver testing here in the States. It would make things so much nicer. But again, instead of having anyone take responsibility, we will have computers fix our problems for us. What a world! But let me see. Chad says Texas outside of the cities has some of the best highway mile per hour roads. Yeah, because there's that toll road, right? The famous one in Texas that, I don't know, what is the speed limit? 85, I think, is the speed limit there. I've heard that road's expensive, though, to get on. I think I was just talking to someone, it might have actually been David Patterson. I was talking to him on the GR Corolla event this past week. Had the luxury, I guess I should say, of getting to hang out with a lot of really cool, car YouTubers, and I was able to hang out with David and again Jack from Savage Geese this past week, and a bunch of others. It's always fun hanging out with all those guys. But I think someone was telling me about that road and how it's pretty pricey if you're on it, but I'm sure it's got to be amazing. I'd love to try it someday, to be driving like 90 without a care in the world. And Luke says, my dad had a state trooper friend years ago who taught me for speed, 7 you're in heaven, 8 you'll skate, 9 you're mine. Interesting. Because see, I've always thought that 9 is kind of like you're good, but then 10, once you're the full 10 over, then it's like iffy. And that 4 over is fine, 5 over, maybe if you're really talking about a cop that wants to pull you over, I've always done like 1 under, that next increment up typically is kind of my comfort zone, depending on again what my margin wants to be for that day and the conditions and all that. But it's interesting. And B. Mitchell says the worst speed limits are states like Indiana, where trucks are 55 and cars are 65. The differential makes it a mess on the freeways and turnpikes. You either end up doing either 95 or 50. Yeah. And I it also makes it tough on the trucks because, most of them probably don't want to do 55, but then the cars always have, again, this expectation, like you're mentioning here, wanting to go faster. But, I'm kind of conflicted on trucks because like, part of me just wishes like they were also kind of like autonomous in a way, or just like, slower right lane, kind of had their own dedicated lane or lanes and just kind of were a separate thing just because of, again, the giant weight difference between, them and cars. But I also just wish that like some of these truckers, I don't expect them to like always stay in the slow lane, but there's so many times where they want to do a pass and they do a pass at 1 mile per hour faster than the other truck in the right lane. So you're sitting there doing 56 and a 55 or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, like this is not a pass. Like you did not need to do this. Like if you're gonna go this slowly doing this pass, like do the pass quickly and get it done. Get out of the way for everyone. Like there's so many times where it's like, it's so good you passed them. You can now do 3 miles per hour faster than the truck you're behind. I mean, again, it's I'm sure after a while it probably would get on your nerves, but it's just like, man, not fun to sit next behind slow trucks either. And I see React says, do you know any car reviewers who have the Elantra N? I do not know any reviewers that have an Elantra N, unfortunately. A Silva says, any update on the Discord link? Discord link is yeah, so I think last time someone mentioned that if you want to send me a message, I'm happy to give you the new link. I can also do a member post with the updated link because I guess the other one didn't work. So yeah, maybe that's something I can do here. I want to do a post tomorrow for Back in the Future Day, and then I'll do a member post maybe on Tuesday with the Discord link. If you want just send me a message, Silva, whatever platform you want to send a message on, and I can send you the link though, so you don't have to wait to get into the Discord server there. But yeah, because it's not a whole lot of activity in there, but it's fun to chat in there every once in a while when people decide to make a post. But let me see. Good Stick says Ford 2 was future thinking. The Fusion had this swoopy roof line, which a lot of sedans are going to. Yeah, I mean, and I think Fusion looked so good. It was such a sharp car. I don't think it ever got enough credit, honestly. And Linda, thank you so much for being a member for 26 months. She said, my sister literally saw a ghost at a friend's old summer home. That's crazy. Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, this is a completely non-car talking about ghosts, but it's a really fascinating thing about it's a very deep subject. Obviously, it leads into various other things and all that, but it's interesting to think about. It's always fun around this time of year. Let me see. Ben says, in your defense, Matt, it's your live stream. You get to decide how long you spend on each question. True, but I also don't want to bore people, So, I mean, if moving quickly through the questions helps people to be more engaged and I'm boring people, I definitely don't want to do that. So I'm happy to keep up the pace to make it a little bit more enjoyable for everyone. And Rafi says, if I need an all-wheel drive daily, I'm on the Geo Corolla train for sure. Can't wait for the review. Appreciate that, Rafi. And yeah, it is a fun one, I promise. Luke says, on Halloween, I used to put a portable speaker in my bushes and play a Rottweiler barking when people would walk by. That's fun. That's so many fun things for Halloween. And my daughter, she loves the decorations. We like go out of our way to drive and see all the fun decorations that people have out there. Ford Enthusiast says, hey, Matt, since you mentioned sedans, thoughts on which you would get, Camry or Accord, maybe even Sonata, K5 or Legacy? I mean, again, it comes down to preferences, but as far as what I personally would get with my conditions and my preferences and everything, it's tough. I think I also don't know which one I'd pick, because they all have redeeming qualities. So, and they also have, a lot of them have drawbacks. Like, because my knee-jerk reaction is to say K5 GT or Sonata N line, because they're super fun. They love to do burnouts everywhere they go. They're kind of a mess dynamically because they don't have a limited slip diff, but they're really fun and they have more power than Camry and Accord do these days. And Legacy is not well set up in my opinion. So Legacy is not even in the realm of consideration for me. So, but yeah, but then I do love Camry. Is so good. Accord is great just for cruising. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if I was paying for the gas, I'd probably be between Camry or Accord. But if I didn't care about gas or gas prices or whatever, and I didn't drive in winter, I would probably say, Sonata N-Line or K5 GT. But realistically, if I was spending my own money, I would probably go for Camry. just because it's really dynamic with the all-wheel drive system. I do have a week with on the Camry that I filmed back in the summer that I'll be finally posting up here next week or two. Yeah, actually that got bumped, so now I think that's like early November. So, but anyway, yeah, I think Camry is probably what I go with. Accord is also a very solid choice. I just don't like that you don't have satellite radio in the top versions anymore. And Good Six says the Charger EV would be a good car for Halloween. It would traumatize and scare hardcore Mopar fans. It's true. Yeah, that'd be the most terrifying thing. You show up at a Mopar meet, everyone would run the other direction. Yeah, that's a good one. Good Six also says, I think the new Charger is even more controversial than Tesla is these days. I think among enthusiasts, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, generally speaking, car enthusiasts probably have less of a issue with Elon and the things that he's done compared to the general public. Versus again, yeah, Charger EV just, being completely hideous to most enthusiasts, from a ideological standpoint, I suppose. I'm very excited to review the Charger. I mean, I know the comment section is going to be brutal, just like it is on every single thing Dodge posts, but I'm cautiously optimistic for that vehicle, and we will see. But Good Stick also says they can repurpose gas stations for hydrogen and e-fuels as the gas station network is very developed. For some of that, yes. As far as like the service station part or the, I guess, food stuff, the convenience part of it. But, hydrogen, is not a swappable thing with gas. E-fuels certainly is, still regular kind of gasoline. So that you could absolutely, if e-fuels ends up becoming commercially viable, for a cheaper price, absolutely drop it into gas stations, gas tank, and you're good to go. But hydrogen, you need a whole new thing. You can't, it's different with the way it's stored. It's got to be stored really cold, and that's a whole thing. So there's a lot more to it, and there's also more chance for it to break and go down, which is why you see a lot of hydrogen stations that are out of service, and the network is actually crumbling. It's not going in the right direction. So it's a little tricky. That's why, honestly, I think if we are taking bets on something to be an alternative to EVs, I think e-fuels actually is a better shot than hydrogen, especially because, again, we are seeing cars getting more of a luxury in general because of their increasing costs. And again, we're seeing popularity of alternatives like e-bikes for people who maybe don't want to spend a bunch of money on a car. And as we see that, unfortunately, probably get worse and worse, and cars become more and more for people that have more disposable income for that stuff, I think that the e-fuels are going to be another one of the pay to play kind of deals where it's like, yep, it's $7 a gallon, but do you want to have your loud noises or don't you? And it's going to probably come to that at some point, and I know that's what the EU is gearing up for, is the only loophole to keep the combustion engines going is e-fuels. Beyond 2035, it's only e-fuels in your car. If you want to have, for new cars shipping from the factory, they have to only run on e-fuels. And I think that's, what you're going to see is, that's going to be, it's just going to be more expensive. And so you're going to have to make the choice of, that cost parity is going to get even more drastic of like, electric's already cheaper to run than gas, but then it's going to really be like gas will really go up in price a lot, and EVs will really be dropping. And it's just going to have this giant gap of you're either rich because you're driving a internal combustion engine, or you're one of the people that wants to save money with an EV. And so I think that's going to be the way it's going to look in 10 years potentially, and we'll see. But B. Mitchell says, Matt, will you have boots on the ground for the Scout reveal on Thursday in Franklin, Tennessee, or be vicariously online? I will be at that event. So I am very fortunate that I got an invite to the Scout reveal, and I will be filming it. I'll be having a tour of it. Hopefully, I'm not sure exactly how much I'm going to be able to do. As far as with pre-production stuff, it's always, some of them let you poke around inside, some of them you're not allowed to sit in it at all or touch it or whatever, so there's varying degrees. I'm not sure how far along it is. I don't have any info on it at all yet, and of course I'm under embargo until Thursday anyway. So but yes, I'll be there to cover it. And it's not, I think it's actually the first time in my life I've ever covered the first product for a brand new brand. Obviously, again, Scout has their history, but yes, so I'm excited to cover that going to be a little bit of a crazy trip because it's a very quick turnaround on that one. But it's it'll be cool to see, and I hope it's done well. I hope that the event is done well and everything. Again, totally unknown, new brand, new vehicle, and yeah, but I'm excited for it. And so stay tuned for that on Thursday. I will have a video right there at the embargo drop for that one. Linda says she loves having a CD player as well and the extra trunk space without the subwoofer in the trunk. Yeah. And Gustic says it's 8 p.m. where he's at. Good night, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. Good sticking. Yes, we are. I didn't realize we are over time here. So we will sign off here. Yeah, Cara says, thank you so much. I found that Motor Trend article. Checking the electric vehicle battery forecast today, tomorrow, and the far future, mostly sunny. I love nerding out on that kind of thing. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you found it. And yeah, enjoy the article. Hope it gives you some great info. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it after you've digested it, because you probably have a better handle on that stuff than I do, honestly. So I'd love to hear your thoughts once you've checked it out. But Good Six says, I could bore everyone on the various reasons why you end up seeing the truck drag races, but I'll just say most fleet trucks are limited to about 65 miles per hour or so, which causes some of the issues. Interesting. I didn't know there was a limiter there. That's cool to hear. Thanks for the insight on that. I'd be curious to hear even more. It wouldn't be a bore to me, because the more that I understand, the less ignorant I become, and and that's always a good improvement. So I'd love to learn more in the future, maybe on the next live stream, or if you want to send a message, if you ever get bored and want to write a paragraph for whatever reason, Triton Car Guy, I'm all ears. So thanks for sharing the info there. And Austin says, I wonder if the new Scout will come with a pre-rusted appearance package. I mean, hey, anything's possible, right? It'll be fun. Ben says, Doug DeMuro recently did a list of his favorite YouTube channels. I felt bad for you as I thought about how you don't have time to watch other channels. Yeah, yep. It's just, it's my life, but it's all good. Maybe someday I'll have a better work-life balance. But yeah, I did hear about that video from Doug. I'm planning to skim through it and hear his thoughts on that. But yeah, I don't usually tune into Doug, but that's one that I'm kind of curious to hear what his thoughts are there. I know I'm certainly not on the list, but I'm curious who he likes. It seems like he kind of looks down on most other reviewers from what I've gathered and from what I've gathered. So anyway, but Austin says, have a great week, everyone. And V. Mitchell says, time to put Matt away for the night, hopefully before YouTube shuts me down for the fourth time during the live stream. Grumble, grumble. Sorry about the hiccups there for you, V. Mitchell. But Austin says, spoiler, Doug didn't mention Matt. Phew, that's a relief. But anyway, thank you all so much for hanging out here in the live stream. Sorry if I bored those of you with long answers. We'll try and do better with that next time. But thank you all so much. Have a great week. And again, stay tuned for that GR Corolla Automatic. And I also have a little quick drive on the GR86 Hakone Edition and the new changes for 2025. And yes, lots of sporty stuff here coming up for the rest of the month. So stay tuned for all that fun stuff. But anyway, thank you all very much for hanging out here. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.